Live from Washington, D.C., Transport Topics presents Coordinate, learning sessions for executives of equipment and maintenance, featuring Transport Topics Managing Editor of Features and Multimedia, Seth Clevenger. Transport Topics Features Editor, Michael Fries. Transport Topics Executive Editor, Joe Howard. With special guests, Paul Rosa, Senior Vice President of Procurement and Fleet Planning for Penske Truck Leasing. Kevin Wadick, CEO of Fleet Pride. Kevin Clark, Fleet Services AVP of Vehicle Operations at Cox Automotive. Dan Egan, Regional Senior Service Director West at Fleet Pride. And finally, Brian Mulshine, Senior Director of Product Management for Trimble's TMT Solution and Connected Maintenance teams. And leading you through your day from start to finish, your host, Transport Topics Managing Editor of Features and Multimedia, Seth Clevenger.
Hello, I'm Seth Clevenger, Managing Editor of Features and Multimedia at Transport Topics. Welcome to Coordinate, the third virtual program of 2024 in our quarterly digital event series for transportation industry leaders. Today, we'll be focusing on the ins and outs of parts supply chain management. We're going to speak with experts at top fleets and service providers to help you learn how to navigate common parts-related challenges and find new opportunities for success. With operating costs on the rise, it's more important than ever to make the best choices for your fleet. Parts and services constitute a substantial slice of a fleet's budget, which means that ensuring your technicians have the right parts at the right time is vital. How effectively are you managing your inventory? What market trends are impacting heavy-duty parts ordering? What does the future of the parts supply chain look like? The experts joining us today offer the knowledge and insight you need to take your fleet maintenance operations to the next level. But before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Fleet Pride. Fleet Pride is the nation's largest distributor of truck and trailer parts and service in the independent heavy-duty aftermarket. Fleet Pride's network of 300 plus locations, including 85 service centers and 5 distribution centers, means customers get the parts and services they need when and where they need them. Today, we'll be exploring some of the same topics and themes that have appeared in recent editions of Calibrate, our quarterly special section focused on equipment and maintenance trends. Here's what's in store. Our keynote guest, Paul Rosa from Penske Truck Leasing, will share the most important factors he considers in assessing the effectiveness of the parts supply chain and balancing parts availability with cost efficiency. During Cup of Joe, TT Executive Editor Joe Howard will join me and our colleague Michael Fries to chat about the parts supply chain and shifting approaches to inventory management. At the lunch hour, Fleet Pride's Kevin Wadick will offer his perspective on the current parts landscape and the future of aftermarket sales. During the road sign segment, Cox Automotive's Kevin Clark will share his thoughts on the ongoing issue of product availability and just-in-time inventory management. In our editorial interview, Trimble's Brian Mulshine will discuss the latest advances in connected maintenance technology and how it can enable companies to take a more proactive stance on vehicle maintenance. Finally, we'll see Wrench Time, featuring Fleet Pride's Dan Egan, in a rapid-fire segment discussing the current state of the aftermarket parts supply chain and how maintenance shops should prepare for the future. But first, let's kick the day off with today's top stories.
Now let's dive into the day's top stories. 7-Eleven announced an expansion of its 7-fleet diesel network, aiming to grow from 375 to 500 locations across 26 states by 2025. The initiative targets professional truck drivers offering services like high-flow diesel pumps, diesel exhaust fluid, and truck-friendly amenities. The expansion is part of 7-Eleven's broader strategy to enhance its presence in the trucking industry, providing competitive pricing, loyalty programs, and various payment options to meet the needs of commercial fleets. On the topic of driver amenities, the Texas Department of Transportation has opened 2 new rest areas on Interstate 10 near Van Horn, providing 116 truck parking spaces. These facilities are among the largest in the state, featuring Wi-Fi, restrooms, and safety lighting. The rest areas are strategically located to combat driver fatigue, a significant cause of accidents in the region. Texas DOT plans to integrate these rest areas into the I-10 truck parking availability system, which will offer real-time parking information for truck drivers. Nikola Corporation reported a net loss of $133.7 million in the second quarter, despite a 103% revenue increase from strong sales of hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles, also known as FCEVs. The company delivered 72 of these FCEVs, exceeding expectations, and secured key customers like Walmart Canada. Nikola is focusing on expanding its fueling infrastructure and maintaining a significant share of California's HVIP vouchers. The company sees these developments as a positive sign for future profitability, despite ongoing financial challenges. That's it for today. Remember, for all the latest trucking and transportation news, go to the experts at ttnews.com.
Next up, stay tuned for the interview with today's keynote guest, Paul Rosa, Senior Vice President of Procurement and Fleet Planning for Penske Truck Leasing.
Good morning, and welcome to the Transport Topics Special Event Series, Coordinate. I'm Michael Freeze, Features Editor at Transport Topics and editor of our quarterly report, Calibrate. This is where we will discuss the challenges and opportunities in the truck parts supply chain. Fleet maintenance divisions deal with many underlying issues when it comes to making repairs. Establishing partnerships in the sourcing strategy, balancing parts availability with cost efficiency, and measuring success in the supply chain are the often sought goals of any fleet manager. So for our keynote conversation, we have the perfect guest to provide us the insight into these issues and much more. To join us, we have from Penske Truck Leasing, Paul Rosa, Senior Vice President of Procurement and Fleet Planning. Welcome to Coordinate, Paul.
Well, welcome. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Nice to talk to you, Mike.
Nice to talk to you as well, Paul. Glad to have you on. Before we get started into things, I just want you, for our audience out there, just to give us a description of your role as Senior Vice President of Procurement and Fleet Planning, and how does that entail, and where does it all work in the world of the truck part supply chain environment?
Well, thank you for that opportunity to share. I mean, I have a tremendous team that works with pretty much all of the manufacturers, component providers, trailer and other providers to provide vehicles for our company across all the product lines. Also, I handle all of the non-vehicle sourcing activities as well. And then we get into the fleet strategies and fleet planning activities of how many we're going to buy in a given year and what we're going to buy and things of that nature. But I mean, we have a lot of other things underneath that. We get into the alternative space that we've been dabbling in for a long time now. But for the most part, those are the general responsibilities that my team has.
Okay, well, let's get into those responsibilities, and just kind of on the large scale. Penske is a big place, so just in terms of managing auto parts within the large scale of this industry, how should managers approach inventory management to ensure that parts are available when they're needed across a vast network that Penske has, for instance?
Yeah, well, there's many approaches to this. I mean, it comes down to if you're a local fleet or if you're a regional fleet, or for that matter, an over-the-road fleet. But I think in general, it's all about uptime, right? I mean, a fleet team should optimize on what can they do, everything they can do to keep the vehicles up and running. I mean, that's what we all utilize them for. So, I mean, in no particular order, I'll give you some of the thoughts that come to mind. I mean, demand forecasting. I mean, we use historical data and analytics to predict what we need from a future demand perspective. There isn't enough space on any, I'm saying, fleets shelves these days in order to have all the parts there that you would need. So you have to do some demand forecasting as to what you'll need and when you'll need them. I think there has to be a reasonable just-in-time inventory. And what does reasonable mean? I mean, you don't want to have things coming the day you need them or 2 days before you need them, but you also don't want them coming a month before you need them, again, because of the space and just the normal turn time that you have on them. So to reduce inventory levels, I think there has to be an understanding and reasonable just-in-time inventory plan. But additionally, along with that, you have to have a safety stock, as we call it. So you need to be prepared for that unknown emergency where somebody doesn't make it because they're stuck in traffic or something also happened with the warehouse, had to shut down for some other reason. So we have a little buffer or stock cushion, as we call it, at our locations of the critical parts in order to keep the vehicles up and running. I think fleets should consider, or at least I know we have considered, an inventory tracking and management system that allows you to do proper real-time tracking of what's happening, with the RFID and barcoding technology to help you keep the inventory counts where they are, so you can do quick replenishment orders and things of that nature. But additionally, that system needs to be integrated. So there's technology integration that we have learned is important over the years to be sure you can have a more seamless and simplistic operation as it relates to parts monitoring, ordering, and consumption. Another important one is supplier relationships, which may be the most important one. I mean, you need to develop that strong relationship with a reliable group of suppliers to ensure business continuity and consistency of the supply. I mean, we always look at it as you have to have a kind of a 1A and 1B, but you better be ready with a 1C and have a strong backup provider in case something were to happen. So that's our redundancy plan, our resilience plan, if you will. I think managers should look at order replenishment, lead time improvements and reductions in order to be sure that that's not catching you off guard. I mean, they're all interrelated, Michael. They're all interrelated, but another important aspect of our operation is regular audits and reviews. We conduct regular audits to ensure the accuracy of what we are experiencing, whether it's inventory discrepancies and why, so you don't get caught with a big gap down the road and everything. But I think the string that gets pulled through all of those is continuous improvement in every step of the way, so you can be sure that you're optimizing and improving in that whole area, because it's ever changing, whether it's new technologies, new vehicles, new whatever. So we're always evaluating ways to improve our operation.
You threw a lot at me, Paul. I mean, but the continuous improvement that you were just discussing, is that line that you just said that goes across all these aspects that you just mentioned. And let's break some of those down. I want to get through some of those points you have made, through this conversation. But let's tackle the RFID technology that you were just mentioning, and that plays, a big role within the data analytics space. And often when we're hit with the data that comes from the technology that we use to track these auto parts, what role does that play in managing such a large inventory of auto parts?
I think we all can agree that we live and operate in a data-centric world today.
Yes.
Not much happens without data exchanging. I mean, you think about the use of your phone and all the other things that it brings you. But as a quick side note before I get into the data piece again, think of recent CDK system cyber attack that caused massive disruption across the parts industry through all the dealership and everything. What that surfaced was the absolute need for a manual backup ordering and monitoring system in case people were going to be down for even longer than we were. But what it also surfaced was the huge reliance we have on data. I mean, every day we go to our reports or we look at our information to say, okay, what decisions do we have to make today? So back to your specific question about the data analytics, it's invaluable in today's world to be efficient and effective in your operations, and using some sort of modeling software or system that can allow a fleet to understand and better predict the type and volume of parts that are needed to maximize uptime. I mean, you can't replace that today. I can't understand how a fleet would operate today without having some sort of data analytics. You can see in real time what is needed, where is it needed, when is it needed, and how much is needed. I mean, you can do so many good things with that. The point about I mentioned earlier about continuous improvement. The data allows evaluation to see how do we make our business better so we can deliver a better solution to our customers. And I think ultimately that's what data does for us.
Okay. All right. Let's get into, we discussed, the technology just a bit through the data analysis of things. And you had mentioned, parts availability as well. handling, such a large inventory of parts, from, the fleet that you're involved with, how do you balance that need for immediate parts with keeping costs down? I know that's a topic that keeps most, fleet maintenance managers up at night.
Well, I would say it's not really a balance for us in the sake of uptime is too important for our customers and our business. We have multiple fleets that we operate ourselves, whether it's our logistics division, our commercial rental, or consumer rental fleets. And uptime, as I mentioned, as we talked about twice already, is too important. So the short answer is there is no balance. Uptime for our customers has to be top priority. So we need to do what we need to do to keep the equipment active. And if we have to pay what we need to pay in order to keep the vehicle on the road, that's what we'll have to do. And then we work on a solution to improve those situations. So we'll identify as a scenario plan or a scenario that we have to plan for where, okay, we have these instances where a vehicle is down. The only way to get a part when you don't want to get it, you have to pay X. We may have to just say we have to do what we have to do, especially from an over-the-road operation. So, I mean, it is a balance, but it's not a balance that we say we're going to wait X amount of days or weeks in order for a part that we can get a little bit less expensive. We're going to make the right decision for our customer at that moment in time.
Okay. And that the first question that I asked, you had mentioned, partnerships as well. And that, could you describe this, the collaboration of the with these partners, and to have those mutual benefits and sustain supply intact for just to make repairs. But in that collaboration, what's the criteria that do you use to select these particular partners for sourcing parts? I mean, is there a checklist that you go by, or how does that go?
Yeah, it's a nice way to tee that one up. I would look at it as at a high level, it comes down to what I'll call the 5 Ps, and that's how we've kind of operated from a criteria perspective of our supply partners. And the last one is partnership, obviously. Right. And I'll tell you what the other 4 are in the respective order that we place them. The first one is people. The second one is product. The third one is process. The fourth one is parts. And the fifth one ends up being partnership. So, but process is the one that brings everything to life, because who wants to do business with people that you really can't work well with? They don't have this, similar approach, similar focus, similar goals, whatever. So we always get past the people side, because in most cases, these companies have great people and they understand what we're trying to do mutually together, which is why we call it a relationship and a partnership. And then from the product side, we're not going to go and partner with anybody that doesn't have the necessary product or parts, in this case, that work for our operation. So it really comes down to the process side of things. And that's a lot of what we were touching on, parts fulfillment and on-time delivery and having the parts when you need them and so on. So the criteria is that you have really sound processes. And if you have good people, the product we need, and you have supporting processes that can help our business, the price seems to take care of itself. And then you get into, you have forged a partnership. That's kind of how we look at it. But easy ordering, clear metrics to support the operation, timely fulfillment, complete fulfillment. You can kind of go one level down to say what else is there from a criteria perspective. But that's how we evaluate suppliers and providers to be partners, strategic partners, I'll say.
Okay. Well, Paul, when you're dealing with those primary metrics of the effectiveness of the supply chain, pretty much, what is defined as a win? I mean, how do you measure? How do you take those metrics and define success when it comes to continuous improvement with your operations?
I'll go back to some of the points I was making earlier with some of the questions, and it's about uptime. If we measure uptime, and uptime is in the controllable side of uptime, where it's parts related in this case, not necessarily if you were down technicians or the vehicle couldn't get delivered to the place it needed to. But if we look at it when it's in one of our operational shops and we have the necessary parts, because we're focusing on parts and part suppliers, if we have maximum uptime because the part is available, or we have to get a part as fast as we possibly can and it can be expedited in a respective way, we look at that as success. I think you can get into a lot of smaller pieces, whether it's order turn time, response time, the timeliness of the parts delivery, the accuracy of their fulfillment on an ongoing basis, how complete was the order when you placed it, billing act. I mean, you can get all those smaller pieces, but at the end of the day, if we can get the customer up and the uptime can happen at the highest level, then I think we look at that as a collective success with our partner. If we focus a little more specific on the supplier of the parts, then you get into some of those other supporting ones that I mentioned. What you didn't hear me say is that we get into the total cost side of it, because again, we'll make the right decision that we have to make to get the customer up, even if it's going to cost what we don't typically pay for that part or parts, because it's that important for us.
Okay. You know, with all those little pieces that you're just discussing, you know, everything, as you said, if everything goes right, that's a smooth operation when it comes to, you know, ordering that part and receiving that particular part. But as we know, you know, we don't live in too much of a perfect world, and as we've known for the 4 years ago with COVID, and how that, you know, created a disruption in that particular supply chain. And I'm pretty sure there's many ways to enhance the resilience of that particular supply chain when it comes to disruptions. But I just want to ask you, Paul, since we have you here, during that the time of the COVID-19 pandemic and the things that were going on with the supply chain, now 4 years later, you know, from your opinion, what are those key takeaways from handling the supply chain disruptions that were caused by the pandemic, and how do you apply them now to your operation?
Yeah, that was a tough times for sure. And if I can, I'd like to first recognize and acknowledge everyone that supports the transportation industry's supply chain, and really for two reasons. Until COVID happened, things were very stable and for the most part quite predictable, with minimal disruption throughout the year. So we kind of got spoiled from that perspective. And then through the last few years, let's call it 20 to 23, the suppliers, the providers did an amazing job battling through. We really need to thank them. And for any of them that would be listening, I want to personally, I mean, I've said this to them individually, and I've said it enough of times in different sessions, but I want to thank you for the opportunity to at least kind of highlight this. Thank them for the incredible work that they did to keep tractors, trucks, and trailers rolling. Unprecedented situation, and how they handle it was as good as it could have been, given the disruption that we went through. Now, with that said, what the pandemic did is clearly surfaced the gaps and the weaknesses across the entire network. No one was immune. Everyone learned from this. As much as it hurt many of us, I'd like to think of it as a tremendous learning opportunity. And that's how we've talked through it with our providers, that obviously we were impacted by it. And I look at it this way: no one doesn't want to sell you their product. I mean, if they that were the mindset, then they're probably not going to be in business too long. Right. So they were all uptight about it as well. But it prepared us for that next interruption. We all hope nothing like that happens, but we have to be prepared for it. So the huge takeaway that was consistent across all of them, Michael, was redundancy. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you were the OEM, a tier 1, a tier 2, a tier 3, or other. Everyone had a single provider in one way or another through their supply chain, whether it was inbound to a plant, inbound to a component provider, or aftermarket provider. Everyone had a single source provider in some way, shape, or form that left them vulnerable. So the takeaway that we all learned is you have to have redundancy. And I'd like to say, from where we are today, the interactions that we have had, most of all the providers that we do business with have surfaced where they had single source and have figured out a way to have redundancy there on a regular cadence now, not when they might need it in an emergency, because you can't go to somebody in an emergency and say, okay, I need you now. Well, you haven't done business with them for 2 years. So now most suppliers that we do business with have got a regular cadence. They balance some of that call it need or spend with those providers to have it balanced out. And I think that has rippled through the entire supply chain for parts, from the initiation of the part itself to the delivery of it to an end user. So I think it was an unfortunate circumstance no one ever wanted to go through. We know that, but I think the takeaway was monumentally important.
All right. Well, Paul, we talk about that past, we can also talk about the future as well. recently in the pages of Transport Topics in our special report of electric vehicles. We had you quoted on the, pontificating on the electric vehicle infrastructure and just how that whole concept and how dynamic will play out in the trucking industry. And I just kind of want to ask some questions about EVs, and other technologies when it comes to the evolution of the parts supply chain, through its strength through the times of COVID, which is now a more robust system. I just wanted to ask you, for the adoption of electric vehicles, how do you foresee that? The adoption rates, how do you see that impacting the supply chain? I mean, are we in the beginning stages of things, or how do you see that?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Transitioning to that. Okay. The new zero emission vehicle space, it's creating an interesting challenge to the industry and to the supply chain of parts. We are basically replicating and duplicating an entire parts book for a zero emission vehicle like we have for ICE. And that poses a lot of challenges. Does somebody have the capabilities to have all those additional parts? Because you're now limiting the number of parts you have in your parts shops at each of your locations, because it's already enormous as it is. But now you got to figure out a way to reduce the number of parts you have so you can make room for zero emission parts, or you get a bigger parts room, basically. So that's one of the things we're dealing with. I'm not worried that fleets will be able to handle the processing time, the processing involved with these additional parts. So process management, because that's just a matter of adding additional SKUs to their systems and stuff like that. So I think that happens every day. You have new vehicles, new model years, new componentry in ICE. So that's just a natural progression. But what I am get concerned about is the additional space, as I said, that's needed, not only in the locations that had the fleets themselves, but warehouses and so on. So now, that's just opportunity for more warehouses, I guess. But what has me most concerned is many of the startups, not the traditional OEMs that have introduced zero emission vehicles. I'm talking about many of the startups aren't fully aware of what is needed to have a support network for the supply chain across the country for where the vehicles will operate. So I think there's some learning there that our industry is going to have to kind of go through some growing pains on. I think other than that piece of it, overall, I don't see much of an issue here, because over the years, we've had new engines introduced, new transmissions introduced, new this introduced, and it's just a matter of everyone kind of building and adding on what parts are needed for that. So I mean, I haven't thought through that all too much, but I'd say for the most part, I'm actually pretty much not too worried about it, other than, like I said, the startups understanding the network that they've got to create. So there's availability in as many places as there is today with an ICE vehicle. I think that could be maybe the only big challenge that a fleet operating an EV could have in the early stages.
I just want to follow up from that. You had mentioned just sort of the education of closing that gap from the players that are dealing with that. I mean, is that the one main sticking point of all this? Is just sort of when it comes to that supply chain, or I mean, is that a major or minor point?
I think it's a minor point. I think it's a minor point in the whole scheme of things. I think a lot of people, when they go through these decisions on, am I going to go with a zero emission versus an ICE today? Does it make sense for me today? They never get into that. Well, what happens when I need to go through a repair? The more going through it on the front end, am I going to have infrastructure that can give me the necessary charging to operate the vehicle? Does the vehicle meet my operation? Is the spec going to be okay? Is the weight that I'm giving up because of the battery going to allow me to haul freight? They never get to that end point of, well, what happens when the truck is down? And it's not that it's the least important, but I think in the whole scheme of you making a decision to go with a zero emission vehicle, it's one of the minor things to be thinking about, because inevitably the OEMs and the startups will have available parts. It's just a matter of how we grow through maybe the early pains of they're not readily available as much as they typically are on the ICE side. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of pain, I mean, well, not particularly pain, but maybe it is from wherever side you're standing on, I guess. let's get into the future of things. With truck units as a whole. I mean, they're all auto parts, if you technically can say that. Which brings me to the anticipated 2027 truck pre-buy event, along with the EPA and carbon emission standards. They're taking effect in 2027. And again, this is as we close this out, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that projected pre-buy event, and the emissions, and just sort of your insights and sort of how you think this is all going to play out.
Oh, the pre-buy, what I lose sleep over most nights.
Okay.
If I tell you what, if we were to go back and learn from our past, the previous pre-buy, the true previous pre-buy that we can equate where we are today was back in 2004, 5, and 6, where you had that big technology leap happening in 2007, the biggest leap that the industry had up to that point. And we know from that time, there will not be enough supply to fill the known demand that we have in front of us. You have replacements for 2025 calendar year, natural normal replacements. I'm talking about natural normal replacements for calendar year 26. And those that want to move in from calendar year 27 into 26, so they don't have to buy the new technology in 27. You add in, and if you add in, there's so many that didn't replace this year because we're still mired in a freight recession. The demand for the equipment in 24 months, and I'll tell you what I mean by 24 months in a minute, becomes so enormous that I think we're gonna not be happy in calendar year 26 when we are not able to fulfill so many needs. So right now we're at the tail end of the calendar year 24's production. There's only maybe a couple months left before you can place an order for this calendar year. And there's actually been pre-buy for this year already. And a lot of people don't understand this or realize this, but in some states, there is the Advanced Clean Truck Rule that goes into effect. You got Oregon, Washington, New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts that are adopting the Advanced Clean Truck Rule that California implemented for this calendar year. So if you don't get equipment this year, you're not going to be able to get equipment next year unless you buy a zero emission vehicle. That's part of the regulation there. So there's already pre-buy happening right now, Michael. So that's why I said it's, oh yes, pre-buy. I've been thinking about it and losing sleep because we're in the middle of it right now. Now I think it'll really ramp up as the 2026 model year, which is for the 2025 production year, gets launched probably in September, industry-wide. It'll get launched. That's when things take off. I think that's when, because fleets are more and more educated about it. We're talking about it. It's been in your publication many times and other places. So now there's awareness of it. People are now understanding what is happening. At least they know what the regulation is about. They know what the potential cost is going to be, which is quite significant. And then the other thing we have to realize is if we go back to the learnings from the 2004 to 2006 period, the OEM at this point, from what we understand, are not going to expand production to a point where it stresses the manufacturing or stresses the parts providers, because they want to get more production in 25 and 26, and then in 27 it falls off the cliff like it did in 07. They're not going to ramp up that way. I think they're going to stay at a known level of total production for Class 8 and Class 6 and 7. So we understand what we're up against. So I hope fleets and fleet managers are not only educating themselves, but are preparing what they need to be preparing for by putting together a fleet strategy and getting ready to execute on that strategy when it meets their needs. Because like I said, you fast forward, there's only 24, 25 months of production that needs to fill 3 years of demand, and somebody's going to be on the outside looking in when it's all said and done and have to buy the new technology. So, I mean, pre-buy is something that I'm thinking about quite a lot, as you can imagine, just in the way that I'm rambling on. But
no, that's quite all right, Paul. I just wanted to ask you just about the conditions you were just discussing. I mean, is that going to be exacerbated or conditions improve? Depending on that freight recession that we were just talking about. I mean, if things continue to get worse, I mean, or even
Yeah.
better than expected. How's
Wow,
that?
what a great follow-up, because it's also one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit here and with many of our customers is, do I do something now or do I wait? Well, like I said, by waiting, you put yourself in a position of somebody's not going to be able to get what they want, because every month forward that orders aren't placed is a month that goes away that can't be replaced. So if the freight recession continues, and boy, I hope it doesn't, man, we all hope that there's that light that now we can start to say it's going to improve. The industry is just going to suffer as a result of it. I don't know any other way to say it. As we've lost countless production slots this year as an industry, where people made the proper decision for the here and now. I mean, I can't do it. What am I going to do? Park a vehicle for 6 months until maybe something happens? No, they're not doing that. So it's a really lightning bolt question that we have to figure out where are we going to be month to month to month. And I just hope the month of August is better than it was in July, and we can say we're off and running now. Now, I will say, once that inflection point does happen, whatever that trigger is, boy, I tell you, we take off pretty quick when it comes to people making those fleet decisions regarding the pre-buy.
Okay. Well, Paul, I don't want to end this on a apocalyptic note that with what you were just describing. Hopefully, the freight recession will subside. So I just want to have one last question for you, just kind of an overall one where, and then the topics we were just discussing. I mean, is there one particular item within supply chain management when it comes to, dealing with all parts from a fleet maintenance manager perspective? Is there any particular item that we're not seeing as an industry that we need to look out for?
I would more answer it this way: is there are opportunities that we should all be thinking through to help our operation. And what I mean by that is there are support technologies that are readily available today that I think can really help companies in their daily activities and their operations. So, I mean, I'm talking about what technologies are not being utilized that could be utilized. I mean, there's all sorts of sensors that are on things today to monitor. There's robotics for efficient warehousing and distribution centers. There's 3D printing that people can utilize for providing less inventory and shorter lead times. You got the whole big data conversation for advanced analytics that you can do for predicting what you need when you need it. Cloud computing, if you take advantage of some of the software that we touched on earlier, for real-time data sharing across your network to make faster decisions, to make better decisions. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are happening in that space that we're trying to do our best to educate our customers as well as our operations on how we can utilize these various tools that can make companies more efficient, more effective. So that's kind of what we're thinking about when it comes to that question. And I think there's a lot of excitement there. I think there's a lot that the industry can benefit from. It's just a matter of getting involved in it, digging in and adopting some of them or maybe all of them. But I mean, if you start to string those together, you can see how efficient an operation can be and how maybe more productive a company can be in fulfilling their customers' expectations. So that's how I would. I mean, that's ending on a positive, I'd say.
Yes, yes, it is, Paul. It's always great to end on a positive note. We've been speaking with Penske Truck Leasing's Paul Rosa, Senior Vice President of Procurement and Fleet Planning. Thank you, Paul, for joining us on this keynote of Coordinate, and thank you for making us smarter. There was a lot of information that we received from you today, and I hope it's helpful for our listeners. Thank you very much for joining us.
It was my pleasure, Michael. You have a great day.
When we return, TT Executive Editor Joe Howard on the state of trucking. More about heavy-duty parts supply. And CEO of Fleet Pride, Kevin Wadick, gives us the inside scoop of a perfectly stocked maintenance bay. Stay tuned.
Since its humble beginnings in 1999, Fleet Pride has become the largest distributor of heavy-duty truck and trailer parts in the nation and continues to grow. Fleet Pride spans 300 locations across 46 states, which support over 75 service centers, as well as several locations that provide specialty services such as driveline, fluid power, body repair, equipment uplift, wrecker service, and much more. You can count on Fleet Pride's team of over 4,000 heavy-duty experts to work hard every day troubleshooting maintenance and parts issues, identifying tailored solutions, and operating to keep your truck out of the bays and back on the road. Fleet Pride's 5 strategically located distribution centers provide a reliable supply chain coast to coast that fully support everything, from the branches and service centers to the online orders made on FleetPride.com. With over 500,000 heavy-duty parts available at just the click of a button, Fleet Pride's unmatched product range is an industry-leading resource that gives you the ability to find, buy, and manage everything for your fleet. Search for parts 24/7 as you filter them by VIN or cross-reference. Schedule recurring orders, see live inventory status, manage invoices, and so much more. Buy online and ship straight to you or your business, or choose your nearest local branch for in-store pickup. It's no wonder why FleetPride.com is the first click in heavy duty. To learn more, visit your nearest Fleet Pride branch or go to FleetPride.com today.
Next up is Cup of Joe. Transport Topics Executive Editor Joe Howard offers a look into the newsroom with Managing Editor of Features and Multimedia, Seth Clevenger, and Features Editor Mike Fries as they discuss current trends in truck maintenance and how they shape their stories.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Cup of Joe. My name is Joe Howard. I'm the Executive Editor here at Transport Topics, and this edition of the Transport Topics Special Event Series is called Coordinate. It aligns with our Q3 Calibrate. We're talking about auto parts. Actually, one of my favorite topics because I'm kind of a gearhead. I'd love to talk about, how do we keep these trucks on the road? It's easy when they're new, and it gets a little harder the older they get. And somebody who's living and breathing it these days is Michael Fries, Features Editor and Editor of Calibrate. Also joined by Managing Editor for Features, Seth Clevenger. And we got 3 really good gearheads here, so this is a great topic. And Michael, I'm going to start with you because this is the issue of Calibrate that you've been overseeing. And as I mentioned, I just love this topic. One of the reasons why is because I just lived it. I have an older car, and the part I needed to keep it on the road was no longer in production. So I won't mention the company that's no longer producing that part, but I wasn't happy with it when I heard that. But I sourced one. I found one. It's a used part. The old girl started this morning, took me where I needed to go. So far, so good. But, I'm not so sure fleet managers are dealing with used parts all the time, maybe here and there with an older truck. But finding parts is not always a cakewalk. You have to hope that the warehouse has it nearby. That's not going to take 3 days, 4 days to get to you. There's a whole lot that goes into keeping a truck on the road. And, waiting around for a part is just not something you want when, that truck sitting is costing you money. So, we're talking about auto parts in the broader supply chain here, but it gets down to what matters to a fleet manager. So, with this issue of Calibrate and even, ongoing when talking to fleet managers, what are the challenges, Michael, that these guys are up against and girls with keeping these trucks on the road and finding the right parts?
Well, thanks, Joe. One of the things that maintenance managers are one of the most pressing concerns that maintenance managers have is inventory. That's the main concern, inventory. When it comes to managing those parts, one of the things that's quite simple with managers are having the right part to the right truck at the right time, and with that you have the moments where there's you having that part going to that ground level, having the technician having that particular part for a job. He or she may or may not need that particular part. And then, it's back into the inventory. And then, the riders at those bays are, often trying to, decipher, which particular parts are used for or are used for particular orders. So there creates a lot of confusion in that regard. So you can just surmise that to the point where on your side, Joe, you were just talking about, having a non-existent part or a non-updated part. Um, you know, that could be, multiplied a few times on that commercial side. I mean, but although it doesn't happen quite often, because most like as you had mentioned, most part shops aren't using, the used parts, and mainly they're using, OEM parts. The majority of commercial shops out there when they're doing repairs, you know, it's often to have that clarity in the sense of having that right part at the right time. Inventory management is that big concern that keeps those managers up at night, and having a system that's be able to be able to take those parts, make sure that those parts are in inventory for shops to make those repairs, to limit that downtime for commercial trucks, and to have a smooth operation. It's a bit of a puzzle, and it's a bit of a choreographed dance, but inventory management is the key to running an efficient shop.
And it gets down to data a lot of the times, and data analytics, and knowing what your vehicles need, knowing when they're going to need them. Part of it is experience, and just part of it is just keeping an eye on your entire fleet. And Seth, we talk a lot about data analytics all the time, and how fleets are poring over every last bit of data from every corner of their operation. But this is as core as it gets. Keeping your trucks on the road. So, how are fleets finding ways? I mean, we in every transportation management system, and there's all kinds of systems for managing your tires. I mean, you name it. There's so much data out there. It's always the question of, what do I do with all this data? I mean, what do you find are some of the systems that actually can work, and some of the strategies that can work from a data analytics point of view to actually help these fleets, manage the parts that they need and manage the maintenance needs that will keep their trucks on the road?
Yeah, for sure. Technology, software is playing a bigger and bigger part in streamlining the vehicle maintenance that keeps the trucks out on the road. And we've seen that in a number of ways, right? I mean, many fleet shop operators are using vehicle maintenance software to help manage inventory, manage repairs, really like the beginning, really from order to completion of a repair or maintenance cycle, managing that process. And of course, we have more and more data flowing into these systems and flowing in, connecting truck dealers as well. All of the truck manufacturers have some form of remote diagnostic software and capabilities on their trucks. So if there is a fault code, especially a critical fault code, when a truck is out on the road, that information is automatically transmitted to the fleet operator and can be shared with a truck dealer as well. So by the time the truck gets to the dealership, the dealer is already aware of it. Hopefully, they have the part on standby. They're ready to go. They're sure that they have the parts that they need, and that can save time, right? Because anytime, of course, a truck is in the shop, it's not making money, and that's just really mission critical, especially in an industry like trucking where companies operate on really tight margins. And I think that the last couple of years in particular, a challenging freight market. Companies have been in some cases hauling the same freight for less money, right? With depressed freight rates. Finding ways to control costs are that much more important. It's always important, but you really, really look for ways to control your costs when your margins are tight, and it's harder to generate that revenue. So we see that on the maintenance side, and software, technology, telematics are playing a very big role, and also data analytics, right? A deeper understanding of when parts are likely to fail based on patterns, historical patterns. Artificial intelligence starts to play into this, can really inform when does a part really need to be replaced, not simply a set replacement cycle to work into your PM cycles, but based on where the truck's operated, how many miles, the conditions. Sometimes an AI algorithm can start to understand some trends in a way that a human maintenance director simply wouldn't have time to parse all that data to figure that out. So those are a few examples of how data and technology are starting to really raise the bar for maintenance and parts management and the efficiency of repairs.
And for as good as all of those systems can be, and you rattle off all of these great examples of remote diagnostics and having the part ready when the truck gets to the shop, all of that is wonderful when things are normal. And we just came through, a situation where the whole world got turned upside down, in a global pandemic that nobody was ready for. I mean, Michael, I have to believe that in talking to fleet managers, you were covering this beat before it happened, and you're covering this beat now. So what are some of the lessons that you hear from, some of these folks who are saying, man, I used to do it this way, but here's one of the things I learned from the epic supply chain disruptions of COVID that I'll never do again. Or here's a great lesson that I learned that actually helped me, manage my fleet better. Were there some of those COVID lessons that you're hearing from fleet managers as it relates to the auto parts and the supply chain?
Yes, one thing, the overlying thing that we all can learn from it is that our supply chain is pretty resilient, to the point where, just on a general sense, the world practically shut down 4 or 5 years ago. And, the trucking industry itself was still resilient enough to get parts from point A to point B quite efficiently and in some terms without even skipping a beat. So that's something to be commended, just at large, but the lessons that were learned from many of the maintenance managers was just the point of being efficient when it comes to a particular job. When it gets down to that ground level, again, going back to that right part at the right time, there wasn't too much room for error, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic time, where the delivery of parts was was put at a premium, since that was the particular lifeline that was keeping many industries up at that particular time. So the lesson learned in that sense was the efficiency, and then also just kind of centralizing the parts that most fleets needed, that really gave prominence to they've been around for a long time, but third party maintenance providers really stepped in to help many of those smaller to even mid-sized level fleets that needed maintenance repair in those particular times. So I think in some parts you have the resiliency of the supply chain that us I guess industries especially here in America we're relying on, and it didn't it somewhat bended, but it did not break. And from there just taking those lessons and how number one, how strong and robust that particular chain is, and also just making keeping up that momentum with the efficiency in the sense that when things were down, this mechanism was still in place. But now since some things are somewhat back to normal when it comes to the supply chain, it's definitely made those inefficiencies that were glaring, maybe those bottlenecks that we often hear about on the pages of Transport Topics. It gives us a more cognizant effort to really focus on those issues and attack them head on, since we know in the past that those were the qualities that we were relying on when our backs were against the wall, proverbially during the pandemic.
And another one of the things that I think it taught us too is managing costs, because you had a situation where, okay, revenue just went crashing down, but then all of a sudden when things started to recover and we say you needed some parts, maybe the availability just wasn't there, or the supply chain just hadn't caught up. So I think Michael, I'll stay with you, because I'm just curious, what are we hearing in terms of cost management? Like when you talk about bringing in third party help, well, that's also a cost, but it's also an efficiency. So the striking the balance of cost management is a biggie too. You need the parts and you need the help, but you have to do it in the most efficient way possible. And I imagine threading that needle is just not that easy, especially in the still kind of uncertain economy, in the post-COVID world. What are we seeing in terms of cost management versus availability?
Well, you have to balance that out as well, because you definitely have those random problems when truckers are on the road, and we see many cases where there are those particular must need repairs that are done for, just maybe the blown out tire or even smaller to, a battery, a battery being dead, or, just the, regular engine problems that arise when driving. So you have to account for those particular things as well. And the cost comes in pretty much of the idea of how much are they going to pay for not having a truck on the road. How much expense is going to be lost when you don't have that truck on the road making deliveries. So you kind of have to balance it out from that part, because you can either pay now or pay later, and most fleet managers are probably thinking in that particular frame of mind. But then again, you have the other side of the coin, where you have the preventive maintenance, and that's just kind of bleeds into maybe the resources problem of just having the technicians on site to make those particular preventive maintenance repairs that are often needed, more often than the random problems that are going on the road. So having that, there's definitely a cost element to that, and third party maintenance providers have worked with fleets to manage those costs and provide services and other benefits to help in those repairs. I mean, the cost of it could add up on time if those preventive maintenance issues are ignored long enough. So and having the available part as well, that is very key. Most fleets are talking to third maintenance, or just the maintenance division within their fleet, on having those regularly used parts available at that particular right time. Because of course you have to have the right part for the right truck at that right time. And the ultimate goal is to have that truck out of the bay and making money for that fleet. So I mean, having the pay X amount to have repairs done, or using a third party to have that done, I think the ROI comes in to the time that is spent on with trucks being down. That can be minimized. I think the ROI can be well justified when using a third party maintenance provider.
And Seth, the ROI is really what it's all about. And the last time you and I spoke on this show, we were just talking about, well, they really use technology to kind of manage the maintenance and remote diagnostic, but they're also using technology to crunch the numbers to see well, what is this particular vehicle costing me per mile. I mean, the bean counters really do drill down on it. So, and they have to, because you mentioned it also earlier, the margins that they're working on. You have to squeeze that penny until Abe Lincoln screams. So talk to me about how technology is helping these fleets manage those costs as well. Managing the truck is one thing, but then managing the cost of keeping that truck is something else entirely.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you think of total cost of ownership of a vehicle, it's not just the purchase price; it's the maintenance costs over the life of the vehicle. You also think about the residual value of the truck. If you buy new, what is it going to retain its value on the used market? These are all factors that are very important. We consider the cost of equipment, and maintenance, is one of the very important pillars of that. And it's I think the whole industry has long struggled with maintenance issues around some of the emission after treatment systems. That's a common issue. It's gotten better, but that's one of the common concerns or pain points that you hear about from fleet maintenance directors. That can also be improved through the use of technology, data analytics, understanding how your DPF and your EGR coolers are performing, and when you need to replace a component, and when you need to do a regen and all this stuff. Optimizing that is very important. And that's there's still room to grow on that, right? Data analytics. The more data, the more good data you can feed into it, the more intelligent this can be. It will need to evolve as emissions technology changes. Right, we have emission regulations on the books coming up, and from EPA with the Phase 3 greenhouse gas rule and tighter NOx emission standards as well, kicking in 2027. So pretty soon we're going to see another step for emissions, and we'll see some changes to engines as a result of that, and then there'll be another learning process. We've seen that in the past. Whenever there's a change in the after treatment technology and emissions control technology, there's something to learn and adjust to. Sometimes that's been a challenging, painful experience, right? If you go back to so the 2007 timeframe, there was a huge industry pre-buy ahead of that in 06, and that had ripple effects in the used market for many years that followed. Also a big change, of course, in 2010 with selective catalytic reduction, SCR systems, and diesel exhaust fluid becoming part of your typical truck now is commonplace. But we'll see what this next changeover in 27 looks like. It may be a little bit more significant than what we saw with phase 1 and phase 2 of the greenhouse gas regulations. And you think about the parts management, inventory management, and maintenance work that will go into that. That's something that will be a bit of a learning process. So that's something that the folks who are in leadership and in fleet maintenance should be thinking about and preparing for, right? I mean, 2027 is not that far away. And we also may see, a similar pre-buy situation where a lot of folks order a bunch of trucks next year and in 2026 before the changeover. So potentially some disruption there. We thought that it's smooth sailing coming out of COVID, but it's not. There's always something on the horizon that's going to change it. And I will say that going kind of just touching back on the COVID situation, and especially early on, maybe the 2021 timeframe, when felt like there was a shortage of everything, right? And parts was certainly part of that, right? The manufacturers, the truck manufacturers and trailer manufacturers were having a hard time getting the parts they needed to build new trucks. There's competition from the manufacturers and as well as dealers and repair shops for parts. We've gotten through the worst of that, but it also goes to show that there's always some level of turmoil or disruption around the corner, and being flexible, being resilient is important. Planning ahead is very important. I think that doesn't go away even if the pandemic's in the rearview mirror.
And you mentioned disruption, and you mentioned the 2027 regs coming in, and I'm already hearing a lot about this. One of our reporting colleagues was talking to a dealer who was saying he's trying to collect some orders for 2025 already, and they're bumping up against in some case and in some states some of these I'll call them EV mandates, like some of the states that are following California's lead on clean air and certain number of vehicles that are either being required to be sold in the state or that they're requiring some fleets to buy. So the pre-buy, which is really already starting 25, 26, and OEMs have said that. Some of the OEMs have said, hey, we're expecting this pre-buy to start now. Heading into those 2027 regs, we have another bit of disruption with electric trucks. So you have fleets who are making a good faith effort to try to adopt them. You have some that some fleets that are in some states that are bumping up against regulations that are telling them to adopt them. I mean, how do you feel, Seth, that fleets are going to manage this particular bit of disruption, because it's kind of twofold. You've got this other technology over here that they're under some pressure to buy, which is expensive and somewhat unproven with EVs. And over here, you say a new generation of diesels that have a new wrinkle with the SCR that they're going to have to figure out. It's a lot for them to manage in a moment.
It is, and there's a lot of changeover in equipment. I think that it's becoming more complex than probably ever before. It will be for a while. I'll delete the probably on that. It is. It's more complex than it's ever been, and it's only going to get more complex. And the decisions on which type of equipment to purchase or deploy for which application becomes more and more critical. And there are more options, right? It becomes a harder choice. But the introduction of battery electric trucks is interesting from the maintenance standpoint. Right now, obviously, it's very small volumes. The adoption rates, I think, have been held back in large part by the pace of the infrastructure build out, right?
Sure.
Right now, if you want to run a battery electric truck, For the most part, you're installing the charging at your terminal, at your site, and you're the charging provider, right? You've got to work with your power company, utility company to set that up. Sometimes it takes a long time. It can take years. It can delay things by years. Some markets that the power is available, other markets, it's just there's not the power to support it, even for like an early adopter. So that's holding back the pace, and that's keeping the volumes low. So it's also slowing down how much we learn about how well the vehicles operate, perhaps because there's not as much data. But in theory, I mean, there could certainly be some maintenance benefits from battery electric. Fewer moving parts. Talking about all the diesel emission after treatment systems that can be a pain point, especially when they're newer. And the industry has to kind of learn how to run them and how they can be optimized. But that all goes away with a battery electric truck. So you don't have that. You do have new components, a lot of cooling systems around the batteries. So there's a lot to learn. But in theory, maintenance and parts management could become easier for that particular segment of the commercial vehicle market. Now, I think it's important to understand that battery electric in the near term, can be well suited to certain applications, but it's just not a viable option for others, certainly without the charging infrastructure, especially when you look at long haul over the road. That's another technology pathway. But for port drayage, urban distribution, local short haul, that's where battery electric, I think, is going to be, and it's starting to become, a piece of the puzzle for the industry. And I would expect that to continue to increase with the regulations, of course, that we see that are currently in place. But I mean, if you think about this from a maintenance shop perspective, you're thinking about parts potentially for your diesel trucks on one hand and parts for your EVs on another, if you have an EV fleet as part of your operations as well. So that becomes complex, right? And you'll have to have technicians who are trained, who understand how to work probably on both at some point, depending on the nature of your operations. That'll be, something that, will be pretty specialized in the near term, but, we'll see over time. Certainly the truck dealers are going to have to learn how to sell and maintain and service EVs. So we'll see it there probably first.
So you mentioned being specializing. I dare say that the technicians who step up and say, "Hey, I want to learn how to work on these things." It might be the young new tech coming in. It might be an older tech who says, "Hey, I want to protect my career for the next 20 years." So Michael, we're talking about future-proofing the shop, basically future-proofing the shop for the technicians, for the fleet managers. I mean, for the company itself. What are fleets? How can fleets help themselves to? I'll call future-proof because I like that term. That's basically what they're doing. I mean, Seth just laid it out. You might have some diesel trucks over here, some EVs over here. So you got to figure it out from an equipment side. You got to figure out from a staffing side, from your service staff. There's a lot that's going to go into managing a shop in the next, say, 10 to 20 years. So what are fleets doing, and what can they do to help themselves be ready for this somewhat uncertain future?
Well, there's a lot of buckets, Joe, that you can kind of put this in when it comes to electrification. One is the mid-sized fleets and the fleets that Seth was talking about, that have those that have the diesel component units, and then they have the EVs fleets that are going out, most mainly probably like in the last mile or mid-sized capacity. You have those fleets that, as Seth mentioned, the maintenance would be, the maintenance on them would, especially with the parts, would be minimized, but it would probably be more heavily concentrated on the preventive maintenance aspect of it, just kind of the upkeep of the batteries, of the cooling systems. And especially the tires. That's another dynamic that you have to deal with when you talk about EVs. So you have, that management problem. I mean, not problem, but you have those management challenges there inside the house. But but also with outside the house, there's working with the utility companies, which right now at this particular moment is still a pretty fresh concept. When you have a fleet manager, just getting into electrification, it's literally, where do I start? And having those conversations with utility partners is important to at least get get off the ground running when it comes to having an electric fleet. Another bucket you can kind of put this into, and you touched upon this as well, you and Seth, with just the education of the tech. There's some shops you can go into where, as you said, you have that young group of people, and you have the more experienced techs who are ready to get into that next phase of the career and working with EVs. And then you have others that are, dyed in the wool, believers in ICE diesel fuel and refuse to work on EVs or just kind of have a, disassociation with it, if for some reason. There are still those people out there. So it's really getting really getting the call out there and communicating that, this is the future. I think, we've probably said that quite a few times when we do talk about EVs, but I mean, it is what's coming. And, these fleets, have to make sure that they can make way for that particular future, but in some cases, realistically, there's some fleets that it just doesn't make sense to go to EVs. I mean, but there's some fleets out there who are in that particular position as well. But once there are some areas, especially in the long haul division of things, where if EVs make sense, they will definitely get into that realm. But then again, you have those problems of if a fleet wants to have those EV fleets, those EV units, how many of those diesel units are they going to take out, or how is the work going to be displayed evenly, or just something in the sense that make it viable to purchase an EV in the first place. But when it comes to maintenance, it's going to be more in the predictive side than into most things of things running down. I mean, things will ultimately run down, but there's going to be a time and space when that happens, and as the EVs roll into that critical mass in the next 5-10 years, when the infrastructure is getting stronger, there's going to be more technical information that's going to come out, especially on the maintenance side of things to do and best practices when it comes to EVs. But when it comes to parts being readily available right now, I mean, it's somewhat in a good space. I mean, but there's definitely rooms of improvement to be had. But you still have that unknown known of how EVs are going to play out in the space long term. So I think that's the key thing that most maintenance managers are keeping their eye on.
If I could just maybe just jump in real quick, and I think that no matter who you are in trucking, no matter what type of fleet you're running, your equipment is going to change to some extent in the years ahead. If you're going to rely on diesel engines, the diesel engines are going to change. They're going to have to comply with the 2027 regulations and beyond. We'll see some changes, and there'll be a lot to learn associated with that. We'll see other forms of maybe cleaner fuels that might just be drop-in fuels for a diesel truck that might continue to gain some momentum, like renewable diesel. We'll see maybe a bit of a resurgence for natural gas as an option. There's some more options on the table in terms of engines and capabilities for natural gas powered trucks. Of course, there's EV. There's investment in hydrogen fuel cell down the line. Right. There's hydrogen combustion, right? So this is the form of the ICE, the internal combustion engine, using hydrogen as a fuel. So lots of different options. They're all different than what's on the road today, for the most part. So no matter who you are, no matter what you're operating, type of vehicles you're operating, and what types of trucking applications, it's going to change. So never stop learning, never stop adapting, because you're going to need to. I think that goes for pretty much anybody, anywhere, right? No matter your profession, no matter what your role is in the industry, it's not going to just stay the same. There's always something new to learn, and it's important to think about the future and hopefully stay ahead of it. so you're prepared and you can really set up your business for success in the long term. But even if you anticipate running diesel trucks for the foreseeable future, you will also see some changes. Once you get past these pre-buy trucks and have to switch over to the new technology at some point, it won't be exactly the same, and there'll be some learnings that have to come into that.
Seth, I couldn't have said it better myself. That was the perfect way to wrap this entire conversation up in a nice bow. There's a lot to learn and lots going to change. And they can just come to ttnews.com to learn all about it, right?
Yes.
And read the great work that you guys are doing with Calibrate and in iTech as well, and all of our reporters at ttnews.com. So I think I'll leave it right there, because that was the perfect encapsulation of everything that we have discussed today, and that fleets will have to deal with in the future. So, gentlemen, thank you both. Managing Editor for Features, Seth Clevenger, and Features Editor, Michael Freeze, for this latest edition of the Transport Topics Special Events Series. My name is Joe Howard. I'm the Executive Editor here at TT, and I'm very grateful to all of you for watching this edition of Cup of Joe. We will see you next time.
Next up is your Brown Bag Lunch with Features Editor Mike Freeze, featuring today's guest, Kevin Wadick, CEO of Fleet Pride.
Welcome back to Coordinate. I'm Michael Freeze, Features Editor for Transport Topics. For the next half hour, I'll be hosting the Brown Bag Lunch segment. While you enjoy your delicious lunch, I'll be asking questions to my guests about important issues surrounding supply chain management, including sourcing parts, inventory management, and optimizing distribution networks. To provide the executive equipment perspective, I'm joined by Fleet Pride's CEO, Kevin Wadick. Kevin Wadick brings more than 20 years experience of leading supply chain, product management, and marketing teams. From 2017 to 2023, he was president of Zoro.com, a subsidiary of W.W. Grainger Incorporated, with over $1 billion in sales and a nationally recognized workplace culture. Prior to that, Mr. Wadick served in leadership roles from Grainger from 2002 to 2017, including Vice President of Supply Chain and Marketing for Grainger Europe, where he was responsible for leading functions for Cromwell Group Limited and Fabry Group, Vice President of the Americas SAP Division, and Vice President of Product Management for Grainger's Canadian subsidiary, Acklands Grainger. Kevin, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you as well, Kevin. To our attendees, hope you have your lunch ready. So we're about to begin. All right. Kevin, Fleet Pride is the nation's largest distributor of trucks and trailer parts and services in the independent heavy-duty aftermarket. Can you explain the simplest formula for managing parts inventory as a distributor? How do you keep track of all the moving parts? Literally. How do you ensure that your shops are always stocked with necessary parts?
So it's not an easy task. So what I would say is we have a lot of collaboration across our teams to help make that happen, and a lot of great relationships with our supplier partners. They're really critical in that experience. So, we have a network of 5 distribution operations. Those 5 distribution operations feed our over 300 locations with parts, often daily, consistently multiple times a week. And so what that lets us do is understand what our customers are buying, and then make sure that we have those items either stocked through a supplier or stocked in our own distribution network, and the ability to actually get those parts into our branches on a regular cadence. The other thing that's really important is our team out in the field does a great job of working closely with our customers to understand what it is that they actually need, and feeding that information back to us so that we have the ability to actually make decisions about things that aren't necessarily in our history. So it's really this collaboration of a centralized team that looks at what we've historically sold and takes a focus on really doing a great job of getting parts available for our customers. And then that local knowledge and know-how from our field teams that helps us better understand changes in customer preferences. And it's the power of those two groups working closely together that allows us to be successful.
Thanks for giving us that 10,000-foot view of things. Let's break down things even further. Let's talk about fuels and alternative fuels, and let's get into that realm. What strategies do you have in place for implementing new technologies, approaching electric vehicle maintenance, just kind of juxtaposed to alternative fuels as such?
Yep. So we're in the aftermarket. So right now there isn't a huge number of vehicles from an EV standpoint that have reached the aftermarket yet. It's still like from a penetration standpoint, very small in the overall heavy duty industry. But it is something that we're really paying attention to. And so what we know is that some elements of the vehicles will change significantly, particularly around engine and powertrain. And so what we need to be mindful of is what will those changes mean as we actually see those vehicles in the years ahead get into the aftermarket, in terms of making sure we have the right partnerships from a supply base and making sure we have the right parts. There's actually some parts of the business that we do really, really well today that as EV emerges in heavy duty, it actually will probably create significant opportunities for us. We do a lot of undercarriage work today. And what you would see with that from either the parts that we sell or the service that we provide is the weight of a lot of these vehicles is actually more significant because of the weight of the batteries. And so that'll put more pressure on some of the components in areas that we actually have a lot of success with today. So what we'll have to do is make sure that we're really understanding how that's changing the demand patterns over time and that we're really focused on leading into it.
All right. So Kevin, since this is an event about supply chain parts and services, you kind of touched upon in your answer, a little bit. I mean, do you think that the delivery of batteries, and you were talking about, EV parts, will that change? I mean, is that the main component that changes the delivery of heavy duty parts in general?
I think it's just like the makeup of the parts. So the powertrains are so dramatically different. Right, you have a big internal combustion engine. You have instead a series of electric motors driven by a battery. So what actually changes is the propulsion system changes dramatically, and so that'll change our view of what we stock where over time as that penetration really comes in, and it'll probably change depending on where that location is too. There'll be a lot of different considerations. Long haul over the road is probably going to be the segment of the market that is last to adopt EV versus things that are more local delivery that go back to the same place every night for recharging, and maybe from a total weight that they need to carry. You don't see that as much weight being pulled. When you see some of those dynamics, so that'll change positionally. Like we might have locations that are in along long haul routes, and those locations might need to have a more traditional assortment, whereas locations that are closer to where we see EV adoption will have to have more products that complement that EV adoption. So it'll impact us in really different ways across our network, and so we'll need to be really mindful of how we think about it.
Okay, Kevin. You were just describing the things that we might see, the new things that we might see when it comes to, I guess, the critical mass of EV parts when it gets into the maintenance sphere. But on the other side, what parts do you see becoming obsolete with EVs taking over some fleets?
Certainly the internal combustion engine. I don't know that it ever becomes completely obsolete.
Right.
But I do think that internal combustion engine, like as EV adoption increases, obviously that internal combustion engine parts will change dramatically. That's why you see a lot of the OEMs in that space making significant investments in their EV platforms, because they know that they need to, in a sense, like skate where the puck is going, and make sure that they're ready, whether it's EV, whether it's hydrogen combustion, whether it's hydrogen fuel cell. Like there's a variety of different potential platforms that'll work their way through, and so they're investing and looking at all of those. And then what we in the aftermarket will do is work with our supplier partners to make sure that we're prepared to service the different types of propulsion that exists.
Okay. You had mentioned the internal combustion engine. That's a topic that we're going to discuss in transport topics, later this month. Let's kind of still get into the ICE component of things.
Yep.
What have been some of the key changes and the major impacts on modern engine technology and environmental compliance?
I think what you see is obviously from a regulatory standpoint, you see probably California leading the way from a regulatory standpoint. The EPA also, you see them pushing more and more towards how do we drive clean diesel or cleaner fuel vehicles, less emissions, low emissions. And so it certainly changed the platforms that all of the different OEMs have built over the years as they've kept pace with that. Obviously 2027 is another big shift in that. And so what you'll see is it changes the makeup of the internal combustion engine, which changes the parts. And that means for us, making sure that we understand how those changes are impacting our team members and making sure we do a lot of service as well. So from a service technician standpoint, as those engine platforms change, making sure they understand all the things they need in order to be able to repair on whatever platform, it exists out there in the market. So it definitely impacts, the whole industry and in a pretty significant way.
Okay. But does Fleet Pride have an additive ordering strategy?
So, from an additive order strategy, you mean like how do we help the customer understand everything that they need to complete the job?
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Especially since we've been talking about ICE, and that's the original mover of things. So just kind of having that particular strategy, like what does that consist of?
Right. So I think when we look at it from really three different lenses. So the first is our frontline team members interact with customers each and every day, and so it's really them using the technical expertise they have to not only talk to the customer about what part they need, but actually, well, what job are you doing? And saying, okay, using that expertise that they have to be able to share, if you're doing that type of job, you might not need just this part. Do you need these additional parts as well? So part of it is just making sure that they really understand, the customer understands everything that might be needed. Then we've made a lot of strides over the last few years in e-commerce. And so we actually have, over a quarter of our orders now come in via digital channel. And so when we look at that, what we see is that those platforms provide us the opportunity to also share information with the customer about, hey, you're buying this item. These are 5 complementary things that often are purchased with that item in order to complete the job. We're spending a lot of time and effort on creating better search experiences and navigation experiences on the platform that helps customers find what they need faster. And then really lastly, we have a series of informative emails that we use to try and help our customers understand what's happening with different product developments, what's happening in different opportunities for them to make sure that they have everything that they need to complete the job. And really, if you look at what our customers are doing, it's like they're trying to make sure that they can get their vehicles, their fleets back up on the road. It's a revenue producing asset for them. So they want to make sure that those things are maintained. So we want to make sure we're giving them all the information they need to get those vehicles back on the road as quickly as possible.
Okay. Well, it's nice to hear what you guys are doing on the ground level when you're communicating with customers. Definitely for when it comes to sourcing and ordering parts. Let's take this view a little bit to the 10,000 foot view area. When talking to OEMs, they are all discussing the zero emissions future. Especially for their products and the lines of vehicles that they have coming out. But from where you're standing, I want to ask you to put your analyst hat on. How has the zero emissions future affected trucking parts and services?
So I think it's still more forward-looking than it is near-term impacts. So certainly at the OEM level, what you see is massive capital investments in order to be able to support these platforms as they move forward, experiment with different technologies, EV, hydrogen, et cetera. I think for fleets, you're seeing, because of a desire to lessen their environmental impact, because of regulatory requirements, you're seeing fleets start to experiment with these vehicles as well and see what they're capable of and learn, through that. I think well, there's probably like three really big questions that we as a country are going to have to lean into and answer. And so one is, I think one of those questions is around just the power generation that's going to be required in order to support both automotive and trucking from a transition to EV, and getting that power generation, particularly for heavy duty, into the right locations. So that infrastructure question. There's the battery question as well. Like if we just think about, you know, producing that many batteries at scale and getting all of the different raw materials that are needed for those batteries, you know, put together, that's a certainly serious question for us as an organization and as a country to lean into. And then I think it really is that, how do you get that charging infrastructure out to like remote locations where you have people driving across the country? And so that's why I think you're seeing people not just look at EV when it comes to zero emissions. You're seeing people look at EV. You're seeing people look at hydrogen fuel cell. Seeing people look at hydrogen, combustion and engines. You're seeing a whole range of different outcomes because it's probably not one size fits all solution. It's probably a variety of solutions that get us towards zero emissions.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting puzzle, Kevin. Let's get into the legislative nature of all of this. When I was a young editor about 20 some odd years ago, I remember in the automotive aftermarket, the big issue was right to repair, and that was coming from the commercial auto side of things. And today, we have right to repair to deal with once more. And, definitely the automotive aftermarket industry is facing challenges, well outside of electric vehicles and infrastructure and the things you just stated. Specific to right to repair and the bill that's making its way through Congress, HR 906. What is Fleet Pride's stance on right to repair, and how are you involved, if at all?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So we obviously strongly support the right to repair. And what we say is here at Fleet Pride that we keep the country running, because that's exactly what we do. And so there are millions of commercial trucking vehicles and people whose livelihood depends on delivering goods and services through those vehicles, whether that's delivery of food and supplies that consumers rely upon, getting their packages on time, right? The industry plays a vital role in the nation's supply chain. And this is the kind of equipment that needs maintenance. And when repairs are needed, right, we want to make sure that they can get back on the road as quickly as possible in order to make sure that we keep everything moving in our economy. And so the aftermarket has played a crucial role in supporting, keeping these vehicles maintained and on the road for Fleet Pride and for other people supporting the trucking industry. And historically, the aftermarket has had access to truck repair and maintenance data, but we see advances in technology raising new challenges in access to that data. And so we see commercial truck manufacturers building proprietary firewalls around their onboard diagnostics. And so this is where the right to repair legislation really leans in. It's focused on promoting, competition so that there isn't a concentration among the dealer network, which results in higher repair prices and holds our economy back. The right to repair helps independent shops compete for our customers' business, and it makes sure that there's a level competition playing field. From an affordability standpoint, on average, the same repairs performed at a dealership cost considerably more than repairs done by independent shops. So the right to repair means lower cost to operate, lower prices for our customers. From an accessibility standpoint, being confined to the dealer network restricts access to necessary repairs, which means it will take longer for people to keep their vehicles, get their vehicles maintained and on the road. And so right to repair ensures commercial trucks have more convenient, suitable options. And so there's a lot of backlogs right now at dealerships. And so the dealerships simply don't have the number of bays needed to make sure that they can fix everything. And we know that right to repair is wildly popular with voters. And so how we're involved is we work with industry association partners like AutoCare and CVSN. And at the federal level, the Repair Act that you referred to is a completely bipartisan bill, which is somewhat rare today. And that protects the right to repair for commercial trucking. So our efforts in support of the Repair Act and the right to repair in general have been about raising awareness of the issue with our team members, as well as through industry conferences, testifying in support of right to repair, and meeting with members of Congress and their staff to help them understand it. So I'd like to personally thank Congressman Neil Dunn for his leadership in introducing this important piece of legislation, as well as growing bipartisan list of 56 co-sponsors from across the country. And those co-sponsors are an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. I also want to thank Energy and Commerce Committee Chair Kathy McMorris and Ranking Member Frank Pallone for their strong bipartisan leadership in shepherding the bill through subcommittee. And we look forward to it being heard in full committee. You know, our industry owes each of the members of Congress a debt of gratitude for their unwavering support and commitment in protecting the right to repair. So we'd like to also make sure that other industry participants really lean in on this. It helps commercial vehicle owners make sure that they can effectively manage and repair their vehicles. It makes sure that this is just an outstanding opportunity for you to have your voice heard, make sure you're talking to your members of Congress, engage with them, and make sure that you protect the right to really be there. So a little bit of an answer there, you know, I know, but something that we're as an organization like really passionate about, want to make sure we're really focused on delivering.
You know, having, you know, Kevin, having you know, the right data for, you know, technicians to do their job, and as well as, you know, controlling operating costs, you know, really help in running a smooth, you know, equipment operation. And let's switch gears to the operations, and let's get back to the ground floor of things where the boots are at.
Yep.
And let's talk about running a smooth trucking equipment operation. And in your opinion, what's the most pressing equipment concerns that keeps the maintenance execs up at night? And how is your company meeting those particular goals to help them with their online experience or just experience in dealing with, you know, fleet pride?
Yep. So I think there's two things that really come to mind there. So one is people are looking for a variety of solutions to take cost out of their operations. So, you know, there is always a continued pressure for our customers to run and maintain their fleets more efficiently. And so whether that's through our e-commerce solutions that help save people time, or through our OTR brand of products, which give people access to high quality products that meet their needs at a different price point. You know, there's a lot of different ways that we engage with fleets to make sure that we're taking cost out of their operation. I think the other area that we really see, like our customers and in the industry more broadly, is the availability of technicians. And so I think what we've seen in our country over the past, you know, call it 3 decades, is a decline in the participation in the trades. And so for us, diesel technicians is an example there. And so there's a general shortage of technicians. And so what we're doing is we're investing in continuing professional education and, you know, aggressive recruiting efforts to attract and retain and have the best talent possible from a service technician standpoint, so that we can then help our customers keep their fleets maintained on the road. In many cases, we're supporting customers that have their own in-house fleet maintenance, but they're struggling with the same challenges that the industry is struggling with, which is just the availability of qualified technicians to work to keep their vehicles on the road. So we invest a lot in recruiting, attracting, retaining, and development for our technician population.
Okay, you must be reading my mind, Kevin. My next question I wanted to deal with, you know, recruitment and retention and just management.
Yep.
Of that workforce. We can talk about parts and we can talk about operations all day, but if you don't have the people in place, you know, it's all for naught. You know, so you had just mentioned the technician shortage, and you have worked with thousands of maintenance teams for private fleets as well as independent repair shops. You know, from what you see, you know, how are they approaching the technician shortage? And what types of trends are you seeing that you're encouraged about, or just some of the surprising things that you're seeing in how the operations are ran in general? What are you seeing?
So I think the folks that are really aggressive and leaning in on it it's really there's no one size fits all, you know, kind of solution. It's a multi-pronged approach, and so I think some of that is creating awareness about the opportunities that exist within these careers. Some of it is recruiting directly out of technical schools in order to bring people in and then train and develop those individuals. And then I think it's actually, how do you create like the right environment and culture? And so that often means like, well, how do you help enhance their skills and give them the ability to learn new things so that they can increase the money that they're able to earn by being able to be more valuable to their organization. It's also about creating a great culture at the site that they work. So how do we make sure that, you know, we keep them safe, we keep them productive, we make sure that they understand how important they are, and that how much we appreciate the support that they provide, not only our business but our customers. So I think it's really a multi-pronged approach, and the people that are doing the best job at it, whether it's our customers as fleets or what we at Fleet Pride do, is really that investment back in, you know, the pipeline, in training and development, and then making sure that they have the right culture that they operate in, where they feel like they can come to work, make a contribution, and feel like they're recognized for the contribution they're making.
Okay. You know, with the talk of technology, we talked about, electric vehicles, and there's also talk about automation, and then now the hot, topic right now is artificial intelligence, AI, and the implementation of it, mostly everywhere. So I just want to ask you, Kevin, with your company, have you adopted any components of AI to support the lack of technicians? I mean, is there a possible way that it can?
So ultimately, I don't know that it replaces the technician. Like, I think that we're always going to need technicians because they work in the physical world, and so what they're doing is repairing complex systems, and those complex systems, are not going to be replaced by anyone other than a person in terms of the repair. And so I think, what you see is things like autonomous vehicles, which in a sense are using a frame of, like, kind of, whether you want to call it artificial intelligence or machine learning. You see a lot at the actual vehicle level. How do we make these vehicles safer and operate more efficiently so that you can minimize the amount of repair that's required? So that's certainly something that we see in the industry. I think for us, where we are using these types of techniques right now is more around the search engine that we have on our website to make better product recommendations to customers. It lets us better understand from an inventory standpoint, what's selling where and where we should be deploying inventory in order to make sure we can say yes to customers more often. I think down the road, I think you'll see things like image recognition and visual search help businesses like ours and our customers be able to actually, like, take a picture of a part that you might not know what it is and get you to an answer that you might not have gotten to. So that means we might be able to train people into the industry and shorten the time it takes for them to learn and grow. So I think there's a variety of different places that you'll see this pop up.
Okay. Well, Kevin, you've been around for a long time in this industry. You've probably seen the latest trends and technologies, being billed as one thing, and then ultimately it turns into something else. So based on that experience, what is the key step that maintenance teams often overlook when they effectively utilize technology?
Well, I actually think a lot of our customers adopt technology really, really well. I think sometimes what we see, if we take like e-commerce as an example, like there's a lot of folks who are like, the average age of some of the folks that are maintaining these fleets is a little bit older, and they don't like e-commerce. And I don't actually think that's really true. And so I think sometimes it really just takes us working with our customers and helping them see that our web experience or e-commerce experience is not that dissimilar than, excuse me, if they're going on Amazon in order to buy something, or if they're using another e-commerce website. And so I think everybody is using these things in their day to day. And so it's really, how do you bring technology to bear in a way that helps them? And so, like, a good example for us is, like, you can have a phone, and with our website now, you can search for a part. You can see if your local branch has it in stock and when you can pick it up. And so just bringing those types of technology solutions to customers and helping them see how it can save them time and money and effort is what really allows us to be able to get new technology into people's hands, and make sure that they can use it effectively to actually take friction out of their day and make their job easier.
Okay. Simple enough.
Yep.
Kevin, one last question before we are done with our brown bag lunch. You had mentioned it with the private fleets and the independent repair shops about how successful of a workplace they could be in operations. But for you as CEO of Fleet Pride, a company that has over 300 locations and over 4,000 associates, what is the golden rule to keeping your employees happy and ensuring a successful workplace?
I think actually, like when you think about culture and engagement, a lot of that falls on, when you have 300 plus locations, it's helping all of the managers of those locations understand the impact that they have on their team members. And so we are regularly surveying the overall team about their level of engagement, what they'd like to see different, how we can better support them and help make them successful. We just wrapped up our most recent engagement survey and had 95% of our team members participate in that survey. So we really want to hear our team's voice. And then it's really being able to put those local leaders in a position where they feel like they have the tools they need to effectively support, mentor, and develop their teams, because people work for people. And so while I get to be the CEO, and it's a privilege to lead the team here at Fleet Pride, someone that's working in a location out on Long Island isn't really working for me. They're working for that local leader. And so we need to make sure that we're investing in our leaders, so that they can effectively drive a really healthy culture with their teams. And so that's something we put really a ton of emphasis on, is hearing the voice of our team and then working with our leaders to prepare them to lead the team.
People helping people. I like that, Kevin. That's a great way to wrap this up and put a bow on it. You have been listening to our Brown Bag Lunch segment, hosted by myself, Michael Freeze, and Fleet Pride's CEO, Kevin Wadick. Kevin, it was a pleasure having you on.
Michael, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Next up is Road Signs. Host Michael Freeze interviews Kevin Clark, Fleet Services AVP of Vehicle Operations at Cox Automotive.
Welcome back to the Transport Topics Special Event Series Coordinate, where we're talking the ins and outs of part supply chain management. For this particular topic, let's go into the third-party maintenance aspect of this as part of our special Road Signs edition of Coordinate. Here to talk about that dynamic is Kevin Clark. He is the AVP of Vehicle Operations for Fleet Services by Cox Automotive. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
No problem at all. Let's get right into it. You being with Fleet Services by Cox Automotive, and you are a service provider for commercial fleets. What are the common challenges trucking companies encounter in port sourcing and inventory management?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that our customers are dealing with the availability of products, even still today, in supply chain management. It's a major pain point for fleets when they have to hold a vehicle down because they can't get commonly used parts, just due to our supply chain issues. And that is further compounded by the fact that a lot of fleets are moving to a just-in-time inventory program, which could increase the downtime. When you think about going to a just-in-time inventory, there's lots of reasons why folks have started to do that. In the past, when fleets would have these large on-hand stock inventories, there are quite a few issues that come about by doing that. Not the least of which is the investment overall to have a large parts inventory sitting on the shelf waiting to be used. But inside that investment, then you have the issue of obsolescence. If you don't use the part, you get rid of the vehicle or whatever, you got obsolescence, and you always have loss. And there's, checks out of the checkbook just gone.
I'm sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
No problem. I also think that while what we're doing is expanding our inventory, at the same time our fleets are bringing their inventories down, we're expanding our inventory so that we can do a same-day delivery program out of our locations that are selling parts over the counter. And we're hiring first-class inside and outside sales folks to assist when it comes down to needing to identify or source a part that is difficult for our customers to find. And then lastly, I'd say in our third-party space, our technicians on the road, we are enhancing, you can almost call it a complete overhaul of our parts management technology for our 1,000+ technicians. And it's not that we are getting rid of our existing capabilities, but we're adding new capabilities. We're making it where with our cloud inventory, our technician on site can, through their Trait mobile app, which is where they're creating the repair order, they can create a parts order on their mobile app. That will go to our centralized distribution network or our team, where our procurement people can go from that technician procuring a part ad hoc, standing at a counter waiting, or even make a bunch of calls. Our centralized department will identify where that part is located, obtain that part, create the PO, and make a seamless process for our technician to simply go pick up that part that they needed that was ad hoc. And as that's working its way through with the information we have from the past, we're also adjusting and enhancing our min-max levels in our warehouses for that technician, so the technician has the parts they need when they're on site, unless it's something outside the norm. So we get the parts, the right technician at the right time.
Well, Kevin, what can be described as out the norm when you're talking about that? I mean, is that part of I mean, is that one of the challenges, is sort of that kind of custom challenge that you have to face? Well, the fleets that you work with have to face, at least.
Sure. I'd say that there's a lot of commonly used parts that we can carry on our mobile service trucks or even in our shops. Commonly used parts you could think of as wear items, like filters, belts, these kinds of things. When I say outside the norm, our vehicles are being built to last a lot longer. So no need for a service provider to have one of every sensor on every type of tractor or trailer out there on a mobile service vehicle. So there will be occasions where, a sensor has failed and we need that sensor really, really quickly to get the vehicle back in service. And then we can rely on our central procurement folks to find that part locally and procure it. And our technician is free and clear of the administrative burden of grabbing that part and getting our customer's vehicle back on the road.
Okay. When you were talking about, just in time delivery, and of course that involves a lot of data analytics when it comes to anticipating and addressing part sourcing. How in the last few years, Kevin, how has that data analysis, how has that been helpful for your team, and especially from the ground level and solving these common problems that fleets have, and also that big picture, just sort of having an impact on efficiency, and as you said, the obsolescence of parts and getting the right part to the right truck at the right time.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that, we have many, many years of experience in this business. And while our experience has told us what parts we can expect to stock because our clients are going to need us to either replace it with our technician, or they're going to need it to buy it over the counter to replace, for their staff. We've just been able to dig deeper into the data and really understand usage information that we have with the million plus repair orders we do a year, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of over-the-counter transactions that we do in a year. We can see those trends and create usage reporting with our data team, create usage reporting and make sure that we have those items readily available for either our techs or our customers.
Okay. Well, Kevin, let's move on to the supply chain itself, the resiliency of it at least. How has your operation assisted trucking companies to improving that? There's many strategies and solutions. Has there been one particular strategy or solution that has been really helpful in improving the supply chain?
Well, our focus has been enabling our team to provide our customers with what they need, or our potential customers with what they need. As it relates to the overall industry and the supply chain there, we haven't really gotten involved. But what we have done, as we've been able to create our own distribution network, leveraging the Cox locations around the country, either our Great Dane dealerships in the Midwest and the Northeast, or our legacy fleet services shops all over the East and Southeast, or our Manheim and Cox Communications facilities all over the country. We've created a distribution network so that when our supply chain is called upon, we're there for our clients and our technicians.
Just I'm sorry. I keep on interrupting you. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
No, I just wanted to follow up with that. Having many distribution centers, and it's awfully important to have that, to get, as I was mentioned before, to get the right part to the right person. I mean, to the right truck at the right time. And again, technology plays probably a massive role in that, to providing that information and whatever info is needed to get these trucks out of the bay and off to the road. Could you just elaborate on the importance of technology in improving that supply chain? I'm pretty sure that's very helpful in your business.
Absolutely. I mean, as we continue to get smarter and smarter with how to use data and how to use systems, and our industry has rotated to collecting data in a better way over the past 20, 30 years, we've been ready to leverage that information again to create those usage reports to better prepare us to not necessarily always be able to be predictive when it comes to maintenance, but absolutely being able to be proactive when it comes to maintenance items and failure items that we can help our clients solve their road failure, their preventive maintenance schedule issue, their wear item failure, or collision.
Kevin, having the pieces and parts that are needed to make the needed maintenance requirements for these technicians that are working there at Fleet Services with by Cox Automotive, that all the little pieces make that big successful operation. One of the things, especially when it comes to the supply chain, there have been many challenges, as you probably know all too well. And now with things kind of subsiding and those in the industry looking at the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to supply chain, how would you measure success in achieving supply chain resiliency from where you're standing?
It's about having our technician more efficient for our client. less parts runs for our technician, quicker vehicle uptime for our client when our technicians have been called upon to do that corrective maintenance, or being able to be the supplier of choice for our customers who come to our over the counter operations, ensuring that we're able to make the sale in the same day as often as possible, or quick turnaround on items that need to be ordered for our clients.
Well, we talked a little bit about your relationship with the fleets and other truck companies. Let's go to the relationships with the suppliers. Of course, you need the parts to make the repair. Of course, could you just, Kevin, just discuss the importance of building a strong relationship with suppliers and how it impacts your maintenance operations?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll quote one of my peers, Jerry Newcomb, who runs our parts operations in the Northeast and is expanding them across the country. But he always says that our suppliers are like our family. We got to build strong relationships with our suppliers because that gives us the ability to better serve our client and anyone who calls upon us to take care of their maintenance needs. We have some great relationships with major parts suppliers. We leverage those relationships to even utilize their locations as parts distribution networks for our internal technicians. We have relationships where we have entered into agreement that our inside and outside sales folks are actually selling product for those suppliers. So even further concreting that partnership between the two organizations, helping them grow, helping them get their name out, helping them sell their products while we're taking care of our clients.
Okay, Kevin. What are some of the criteria, especially with new suppliers? There might be some suppliers listening to us right now. What's the criteria that you require to have a partnership with Fleet Services and to ultimately build a long-term partnership?
Sure. We are very interested in what our clients need from us, right? So parts pricing is very important. Parts pricing will not be the only thing, but it will be a part of the discussion because we want to make sure our clients, especially those in the trucking industry that have such strong demands on their margin to be able to operate, are very interested in how they can keep their costs down. So pricing is important. Availability is very important. So we want a track record of availability of those highly used, frequently used parts, and have ability to access those from those suppliers. Ease of access and ease of ability to work alongside that supplier is very important. So if we have the ability to understand their inventory levels when we don't have something on the shelf, being able to have that visibility in or quickly be able to get to that answer is very important.
Okay. Does that go into, well, dealing with suppliers, not one size fits all. There might be volumes, volume considerations, and then the other considerations like pricing that you had just mentioned. Is there a unique way that you approach these, these negotiations? I'll call them, just sort of to reach a resolution that keeps everyone happy. You as the the provider of service for fleets, and the other side with the suppliers giving you the tools to make your job happen.
I'm sure that we do quite a few things unique in that space. I think the most unique thing that we do in that space is we have long lasting partnerships with many of our suppliers, and they understand what we're trying to accomplish as well as we understand what they're trying to accomplish in their business. and I think that's unique.
Okay.
Uh, we're not constantly changing partners. We're constantly looking for great partners,
Okay.
but we're not constantly changing partners. We're working together to make sure that both businesses operate very well,
Hmm.
and both businesses are doing their part to service our clients.
Okay. Well, let's dive into that a little bit deeper, Kevin. About it sounds like this is about measuring and managing expectations when it comes to the supplier. Are there any particular? Well, we kind of talked about the metrics of performance and reliability. How do you communicate those expectations to suppliers that you said they're there long term and you don't change them often? What are some of those expectations that you have the supplier to meet to keep that harmony in the relationship?
Sure. I mean, we regularly meet with our suppliers. We don't wait for a QBR or a joint business review. We are in regular communication with our suppliers. We know when our suppliers are supporting and helping us take care of what's the most important, which is the end client, and those things are active and on a daily basis, and we are able to talk about those things, collect that data, collect that information, help our suppliers know what we need for them to do to improve on either their stocking levels or their pricing model, or where we need help in distribution from them. But of course, we collect that information and are able to discuss that openly in a QBR with our suppliers.
Kevin, we talked about the that ground level. We've just been discussing that and the expectations of your relationships with the suppliers in the fleets. Let's kind of go back out into that 10,000-foot view, and let's discuss the role of logistics and distribution networks, and just kind of the forward-looking perspective that you might have on that. How do you see the role of logistics and distribution networks evolving in the trucking industry in general?
How do I see it evolving in the industry in general?
Yeah, I mean, or if you want to take some specifics, please do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of us in the world have seen a major change in how we make purchases.
Okay.
And how we want to be able to look at our options quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what we'll see, and what I know a lot of folks, partners of ours as well as us, are out there looking to create an e-commerce platform for our industry. There is some struggles in that over in the automotive industry, it's a little easier to create e-commerce platforms where you can go out and look at inventories in these locations that are more automotive.
Mm-hmm.
But we have an opportunity in our space in the trucking industry. Most of our large suppliers and OEMs in the trucking industry have created their own individual e-commerce platform, but that it doesn't connect to the rest of the industry. And I think that over a period of time, there will be a major focus on creating a platform where people like us who have multiple partnerships, and people in the fleets who have multiple partnerships with different OEMs and different suppliers, can go in one place to shop for the parts they need to keep their fleet moving. I think it's a widely anticipated change in our industry that we're all hoping comes about ASAP. And then when it comes to our logistics suppliers, our logistics companies and distributors, I think that once they're able to be able to be pinpointed as the supplier who has the right part for the right price.
Yes.
They can lean on their experience from what helped build their company to get that product out to the industry.
You had said that your time frame for this all happening is ASAP. Could you put a date to that? I mean, not a date, but a certain time frame, or a time frame. Do you think that things would kind of get moving in that direction?
Ultimately, I couldn't give you a date when e-commerce for our segment of the repair and maintenance business would occur. I'll just say that there is a roadmap out there on the automotive side that I've been able to be exposed to. I've sat with a few of our different types of suppliers, not just part suppliers, diagnostic companies and others who are heads down on this work. And I know that that some of those companies, they're racing to market.
Okay.
So, we might see this as soon as next year.
Okay.
We might see the first of its kind.
But Kevin, and speaking to those suppliers, you said you have communication with them. What are some of those near-term challenges that they have in getting to that particular point?
Yeah. Well, after you build out a platform where where all the different distributors could potentially put their product on e-commerce site. Once the platform's built, I think that the real challenge from there is going out and working with the OEMs and distributors and having an accurate feed into their on-hand stock so that the e-commerce platform works properly. I think that there's likely suppliers in that space or OEMs in that space who are maybe protective of that information, not quite sure how e-commerce would work. So there's a period, I think, where we're all going to have to get used to that data sharing in a different, more robust way.
Okay. When it comes to data sharing, one thing that I hear, Kevin, a lot when I'm talking to people such as yourself, is the right to repair, and there are many challenges concerning that, and we can do a whole nother a special event series on the right to repair itself. But in the meantime, how can trucking companies leverage their position in the environment that we're seeing now as we're coming on this I wouldn't say dawn, but the strong movement of technology when it comes to having a competitive advantage against other trucking companies. From where you're at, how can these trucking companies leverage particular trends or the advantages that they have already when it comes to service, definitely in supply chain management?
Yeah, I'd say that choose your vendors wisely. Do research in this space. A lot of if it's over-the-counter purchases where you're asking just to get supplies for your internal technician team or whatever,
yes.
The OEMs and all the major suppliers have portals or where those fleets can go and shop and identify the parts in that particular supplier's network and have access to folks across the line that can help them navigate that and find those parts. I think where the disconnect is there are multiple systems. At the risk of saying names, I'll just say OEM1 is one of the major suppliers, and you're in OEM1 system and they don't have it. You can't just look across the rest of our industry. You have to go into OEM2's website or Supplier 3's website, and nothing is combined. Nothing is there together. But the trucking companies do have access to a lot of portals that the great companies in our industry have built out, and they are they work. What I've seen is our clients, our end users, the fleets, have done a really good job setting themselves up with the best partner in that space. When it comes to outsourced maintenance, choose a provider like us who is constantly thinking about our efficiencies, and our technicians has the ability to have a distribution network, has deep relationships that we can negotiate pricing on our end user and our fleet's behalf, and have the ability to manage the data that we're bringing in to ensure that we have the right part at the right time to handle a corrective maintenance need.
Okay. Well, Kevin, we've been talking about the future, and let's just keep on to that particular topic. As we take this home. One of the things you had discussed technologies and how that's going to change the day-to-day operations of trucking companies. We spoke about that during this interview. But to the technician, we need to talk about them as well. That the technician is the one that makes all of this go. So from that standpoint, Kevin, what new skills would be essential for fleet managers to adapt with these future trends that we were discussing?
What new skills would fleet managers need to adapt to manage their technicians?
Yeah, well, not to manage their technicians, but but in addition to the future trends when it comes to supply chain management. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. I think that fleet managers need to adapt to ensuring that technicians are living inside their systems properly, and properly accounting for usage records, VIN information, giving good repair information as it goes into the systems. That's building out the data that will enable the future of the efficiencies like we're creating. For example, there is some change management and what we're doing here to add our new capabilities. And that change management is not fleet manager and technician not leaving the yard in which you're servicing or leaving the shop in which you're doing the repair to go to the parts supplier store in town to stand across the counter and ask if they have the part and do that lookup, or get on the phone and call and ask before they go there, and then maybe have to call multiple people. In our world, the efficiency we're building in is you go straight to your mobile app device and you type in what you need with the information that we request, and allow our parts procurement team to locate that part for you, pay for that part, obtain the invoice, and efficiently pull it into the systems on the back so that it goes on your repair order, and then tell you, the technician, or you, the fleet manager, where the part either A can be picked up or the part's being delivered because it wasn't there. And then on top of that, by doing that and by making sure everything tracks electronically, we're building out our data and continuing to improve on our min-max levels and our optimized stocking levels for the clients that the technicians and the fleet managers are taking care of.
Okay. Well, Kevin, I just have one final question for you, and it's just sort of you putting on your analyst hat, if you can. Well, you had your analyst hat on a few times this interview, so I'll ask you to put it on one last time. From your experience, in fleet management and in maintenance, what are some of the things that you might see, that you would expect to see in supply chain and logistic management? What are some of those things that people in your industry are not seeing? I mean, is there a blind spot to be had there?
The only blind spot that comes to my mind right now is that ability to look across your network of preferred suppliers and your preferred vendors and determine who has what you need at the right price in a very efficient manner. And to me, the answer to that is e-commerce platforms where you're able, as a purchaser, as a fleet manager, as a fleet procurement person, where you're able to efficiently log in to one platform, one e-commerce platform, and look at all the suppliers that you have deals with, all the suppliers that you have negotiated pricing with, and find what you need for your vehicle.
Well, Kevin, that was a great way to put a bow on this and conclude the Transport Topics Special Event Series Coordinate interview, the special road signs edition of it, at least. We've been speaking with Kevin Clark, AVP of Vehicle Operations for Fleet Services by Cox Automotive. Kevin, thank you for coming on to coordinate and making us smarter.
Thank you, sir.
When we return, Seth Clevenger discusses connected maintenance technology with Brian Mulshine, Senior Director of Product Management for Trimble's TMT Solution and Connected Maintenance Teams.
Since its humble beginnings in 1999, Fleet Pride has become the largest distributor of heavy-duty truck and trailer parts in the nation and continues to grow. Fleet Pride spans 300 locations across 46 states, which support over 75 service centers, as well as several locations that provide specialty services such as driveline, fluid power, body repair, equipment uplift, wrecker service, and much more. You can count on Fleet Pride's team of over 4,000 heavy-duty experts to work hard every day troubleshooting maintenance and parts issues, identifying tailored solutions, and operating to keep your truck out of the bays and back on the road. Fleet Pride's 5 strategically located distribution centers provide a reliable supply chain coast to coast that fully support everything, from the branches and service centers to the online orders made on FleetPride.com. With over 500,000 heavy-duty parts available at just the click of a button, Fleet Pride's unmatched product range is an industry-leading resource that gives you the ability to find, buy, and manage everything for your fleet. Search for parts 24/7 as you filter them by VIN or cross-reference. Schedule recurring orders, see live inventory status, manage invoices, and so much more. Buy online and ship straight to you or your business, or choose your nearest local branch for in-store pickup. It's no wonder why FleetPride.com is the first click in heavy duty. To learn more, visit your nearest Fleet Pride branch or go to FleetPride.com today.
Next up, Transport Topics Managing Editor for Features and Multimedia, Seth Clevenger, interviews Brian Mulshine, Senior Director of Product Management for Trimble's TMT Solution and Connected Maintenance Teams.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for the next segment of Coordinate, the latest program in TT's special event series. I'm Seth Clevenger, Managing Editor of Features and Multimedia at Transport Topics and editor of our quarterly iTech report. For this next session, I'm very excited to bring in Brian Mulshine, Senior Director of Product Management for Trimble's TMT software and connected maintenance technology. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate being here.
So just to begin the conversation here, could you just give us a quick overview of Trimble's connected maintenance technology?
Sure thing. When you look at it, Trimble, one of the leaders in fleet management software all over transportation. And when we look at, we have the maintenance solutions we call TMT. The TMT solution is more of a thick client, which has incredible from payroll, back-end, inventory management, technician clocks, jobs. But there are so many different solutions that we have to develop, and we didn't want to put it into a thicker client because it could be leveraged by other people and other solution providers. So we actually build everything in microservices in the cloud. We call it connected maintenance. So it could be telematics integrations or integrations to OEMs. We're doing a lot with that right now, and truck stop chains. So we don't build it into the thicker client. We bring it into microservices into the web.
I appreciate that overview. And one of the big trends in this space and in connected maintenance is this move toward predictive maintenance. Has been a big topic really for about a decade now. This idea of using data to help predict when a part is likely to fail, so companies can really take a more proactive stance on vehicle maintenance, and as a result, hopefully reduce vehicle downtime, which of course, as we all know, is a major pain point and a cost control item for fleets of all sizes. So just how much more predictive is vehicle maintenance today compared to where we were, say, a decade ago? And how much more can this improve in the future?
If you think about this, a decade ago, before it was all about fault codes. And if you think about fault codes, it's really evolved. There's up to 5 computers on a truck. Interlock braking computer, body controller, engine controller, the telematics device. All these different devices have fault codes. And in the past, the predictive side was more about a fault code is happening, which is really not predictive, it's actionable. But then when you get in prediction, a lot of the vehicle and engine manufacturers are starting to identify faults that they will actually give a report and say, go ahead and replace this. It's covered under warranty. And I'm starting to see some of the engine manufacturers, they have a handful of faults today where they'll say, change that sensor, change that valve, change that actuator based on the data they're seeing. And they're starting to go on the proactive strategy. So now my goal is to make this seamless, because the way the process is working, to me, the process can be improved. What I mean by that is some vendors will actually send the customer an email saying, here are the faults that we want you to address proactively. But what we want to do is work with the manufacturers and take it directly in to a work order, as we call it, schedule the work in, and actually embed it right into the platform so they don't have to go from email to the fleet dashboard.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into integrations a little bit more, but tying all these pieces together, all these different data sources together is such an important part of this. One thing I wanted to ask you about is during the economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw equipment manufacturers, dealers, and fleet operators all had to deal with some significant part shortages that really slowed down production of new vehicles, and in some cases made it more difficult to maintain and repair the trucks that are already on the road. This is really one of the central themes of this program today, so I want to get your thoughts on this. And how do you think that experience during the early COVID years changed the way that transportation companies think about managing vehicle maintenance based on those experiences?
I think they've actually changed the way they do stocking rules. We make software to help them with what their inventory management is. They're getting better about how do we acquire assets, which vendors were actually the best to support them during this time. If an OEM did not have the products that they needed, but others were better at it, that changes decision habits of how they purchase of their assets. And then also leveraging our software, what components do we need to make sure we stock? Because we have inventory rules, and we always have enhancements to help even forecast, like winter seasonal effects. Like we need to make sure we get air conditioning components bumped up as the spring starts to hit. So it's all about getting better about forecasting and getting better about inventory management. And I think everybody had a lessons learned from that, because we're so reliant on letting the vendors have all the inventory. Now I'm seeing inventories increase at fleets to protect themselves on this.
Yeah, I think maybe a shift in focus from just being as efficient as possible just in time to more resilient and being flexible. I think that's a change in stance really across the supply chain, regardless of what the product is. And I think that applies to the parts supply chain as well. So maybe just diving a little bit deeper into maybe tips for how fleet managers, fleet maintenance shops in particular, as well as truck dealers and other maintenance providers, can really help ensure that they have the right part in the right place at the right time. Any additional thoughts or advice as managers in this maintenance field really look to improve operations?
really what you have to look at is the assets you're operating, and you got to be careful that where some customers fail is they have new assets coming in or they transfer assets. Well, they'll worry about transferring the asset, but not the inventory. They got to actually be aware of they're moving trucks into this other market. Let's say vehicles that are based in Miami, they're moving them up to Atlanta. Well, the Atlanta terminal may be used to brand X. Now they have brand Y. And a lot of fleets, they actually will move assets around in some cases, or even in a local fleet. How do you make sure that you have the right inventory by managing better inventory management with using the software, but also when they do move assets, making sure the parts are moved as well.
No, that's a great word of advice there, and something that did not come to top of mind for me when I thought about this topic. So appreciate that. Another issue that I wanted to touch on here, and we hear so much about this, really regardless of market conditions. We always hear about the trucking industry's struggle to recruit and retain professional drivers, but there's also a similar struggle on the maintenance side to recruit technicians. Hear about that all the time, especially technology and maintenance council meetings. You get all the maintenance directors together, and they can kind of commiserate and then think about strategies to improve this. But I think part of the answer can be technology, can be making the job easier. So I'd like to get your thoughts on how connected maintenance software can help make life easier for drivers and technicians, and hopefully start to do something to address some of those labor challenges.
Yeah, no, I helped to, with the TMC organization, I helped to put a document together on technician career development. There's an RP on this that was developed years ago on how do you help grow? Because I think part of it is getting involved with local organizations that will help, be it vote tech schools that are in your area, but also many fleets are actually building their own building ground. How do you actually it may not be a skilled technician, but how do you put a journeyman program or how do you put an apprenticeship program together, and how to put a path together where you take your seasoned professionals. And now there's documents and tools out there that can help you with this. But really, I think we're going to have to build our own in some cases because it's so difficult to get the right person. But again, also aligning skill sets, some people have changed the way they do management of their shops, where these shops is more about the PM bays, and that's where the newer people start. And this is more advanced electrical and all the way down to the engine overhaul, which some fleets do, some fleets don't. But how do you segregate your work, and putting processes in place around that is critical. But so it's a development program internally, maybe having a training coordinator, and having mentors and mentees. That's, I think, going to be part of the future going forward as we keep on evolving.
Yeah, you usually hear from maintenance operations that someone graduating from technical school and just getting into their first job, they don't know it all, right? They don't graduate from school knowing it all. There's a lot to learn on the job, and that learning process is continuous. I think that's going to be even more so the case when you look at the future of trucking equipment. We have tighter emission regulations coming up, kicking in 2027. We see new vehicle types entering the industry, small volumes today, but we see battery electric trucks on the road, investments in hydrogen fuel cell. Maybe your thoughts as well on maybe the complexity and the need to continue that learning process if you're a technician, in this industry.
It's the continuous education is critical, and I think you're going to find with some of the products coming out today with hydrogen or electric, some work that's more advanced may be done with the vehicle OEM, but the fleets are going to have to define, working with the OEM, where do they want to start and where do they want to stop, because it is critical when I think about today, when you're working on electric vehicles, for example. I think about the shepherd's hook. I mean, part of the tool base is different. You're getting a stick that has a hook to get the person unshocked. It's the gloves. I mean, there's stuff that you're doing today with high voltage electrical systems that is specialized in the training. So making sure you leverage the OEM, put your technicians through the right training, because it can kill somebody. So don't just take it for granted. There's some changes to the way you even have to train your people. And also setting up the shop is going to be critical on making sure your facility is right. When you look at, the CNG, you have to have, some places have a separate building because you have different requirements. So the explosion proof lighting and the ventilation systems are different. So at the different fuel sources, you're going to have to make sure your environment is proper for that product you're supporting.
Yeah, it's a lot more complex than just swapping out one truck for another. Different
No,
technologies. There's so much that goes into it.
and for me, it's all software too. It's like,
Yeah.
we're not measuring miles per gallon anymore. We're not measuring fuel tank capacity. It's a different measurement, and we got to make sure the software is ready for our customers to do that.
Yeah, and as you said, some of that work, especially for emerging technology, will the operators will have to lean on the dealer and the OEM for service. But I think that's a good segue into just sort of that broader consideration of what types of maintenance and repairs does a fleet operator want to handle in-house, and when does it make more sense to outsource it to a truck dealer or a third-party maintenance provider? So Brian, could you just share some insights you have into that decision-making process based on the conversations that you have with your customers? How do companies find that right balance?
I think the balance, it's really multifaceted. The first thing is the location. You could be the largest fleet in the world, but if you only have 2 trucks based in a certain city, you may be outsourcing.
Yeah.
So it's first determining what area and what's the volume, because based on the volume, and I call the cost of the dirt. I mean, when I say cost of dirt, if you're in New York City, do you have a facility there? And then it goes into the volume of work and what is the volume. It starts with the vehicle maintenance, making sure that you can maintain the assets. May it be engine oil change, fuel filters, air conditioning, no idle solution maintenance. You're first starting with your basic maintenance, and then what are the most common failure points that you have that are critical? And I think about that, it's basic electrical, rotating electrical, wheel seals, etc. So then start going into that high volume work where you can put a training path, have the right tooling and the parts, and driving commonality in the process. And then when it gets beyond that, I call head covers off. That's when you start to say, do we have the right person? And it might be by the location. In some cities, you might have technicians that came from a dealership or that have a really fantastic knack for supporting you. Okay, let's get them trained to support doing valve overhead adjustments, because that's a little bit more deeper and it can affect the life of the engine. You got to be critical about making sure you have the right person trained and who you want to invest in.
Yeah, for sure. Always a key consideration for sure. Handling in house versus outsourcing. One of maybe switching the focus more to the driver front. One of the ways that they interact, of course, with the fleet's maintenance operations is through pre and post trip driver vehicle inspection reports. Right, it's a routine part of the job, but that's of course some drivers are more diligent about them than others, but it is important, of course. Where does connected fleet technology fit into this, and how can technology help streamline that process, make it a little bit easier and hopefully more accurate as drivers go about those routine reports?
Absolutely. And with TMT, the one thing that we do is we focus on making sure that we can support our customers through the EDVIR process, defect vehicle inspection.
Yeah.
And when you look at this, even though we have our own telematics platform, formerly known as PeopleNet, Trimble Mobility, so of course we integrate to our platforms, but then some of our customers have other third-party telematics providers that have their own EDVIR. Now, what we do is we work on the connected maintenance platform to make sure that we fill all the gaps. First, for running maintenance, you got to have meters and location to track and perform the maintenance on the vehicle. So we do that. And then DVIR, we actually will consume in from the driver the maintenance information that needs to be performed. And then we have a term called reverse confirmation. If the telematics provider has the ability for us to web service back, the work has been successfully completed, that's a confirmation back. So there's different levels of technology based on the telematics provider that we do is we integrate with the telematics provider to get the information, but also confirm it back so the driver has a full digital workflow. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah, and just making those workflows a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more seamless.
Yes.
Replacing some of the old school paperwork, right, is surely an opportunity across the whole industry to make things a little bit more efficient and also make the driver's job a little bit easier and a little bit more a little bit less stress.
And even more better data for reporting purposes. So I can drill in and say, this brand X product has had this kind of problem for drivers, and we've had it 32 times in the last 6 months. It's really critical. It's all about the data. If we don't get the information digitized in a proper workflow in reporting, then you're not really able to head off the concerns.
Yeah, for sure. And just broadening things up a little bit more. I know you can't reveal any product development work that's still kind of behind the curtain, but maybe you could give us some insights into some other maintenance challenges that you're focused on solving right now at Trimble. What are some ideas that you're working on? Maybe some just areas of focus.
Well, the biggest area when I look at the whole process of maintenance for a fleet, it all starts at the beginning. How you onboard the vehicle, how can we make that more streamlined? If you are in need of repair, how do we streamline that? And this is really public knowledge, we've already integrated with vehicle manufacturers. We're working on more to where you can create a work order directly from the TMT repair order system. We call it VRO, vendor repair order. And it'll actually push directly into the OEM software so the dealer has visibility. And then the next step, we've done truck stops, we're doing truck stop chains. And the next part is invoicing. So this way, when you get the invoice, I think about one fleet I was with, they have 5 people in a room keystroking invoices into the system. It's just ridiculous. Let's move this to electronic digital based. We need to keep evolving with our customers to move into the 21st century.
Yeah, great examples. And I think that leads in well to this idea of integration that we touched on a bit earlier. And, that's integrating with, of course, the truck manufacturers, but even internally within Trimble, right? Trimble has we're talking about the connected maintenance software piece of the product line, but there's many other technologies under the Trimble umbrella, under the Trimble brand, that includes the telematics you described earlier, as well as big TMS provider, onboard video, truck navigation, mileage routing. Why is it so important to tie all these systems together? What are the benefits in terms of the data that you're capturing and the operational improvements when you have a seamless flow from one system to the next?
Yeah, when you really look at it, the amount of manual effort that fleets have to go through is daunting. It's ridiculous what everybody has put customers through. Coming here to Trimble, I started in February of this year, coming from a large OEM. I almost like, why didn't we see this? Why didn't we understand this? But when I look at the pain points a fleet has they have to do manually, I'm like, this can be resolved. So I've been talking to my OEM partners, and how do we even go on site and train them? This is what a fleet has to go through. Now, how do we make this process better for them? And that's been very successful. We're going to work with the OEMs to have better integration. But I'd like to even show you an example. I'd like to talk about an example of an engine engineer that talked about, we're going to have this new predictive maintenance on how to perform optimized oil changes on a vehicle. And I asked the engineer, well, how is the fleet going to get the information? And they said, well, we're going to turn a light on the dash. The dashboard will tell them when to do the maintenance. And I was like, that is not how a fleet can operate. And I think pretty much all the vehicle OEMs are in the same boat. In their view, is they're going to use our dashboard, or they're going to use the dashboard that dashboard being a website, or they're going to use the vehicle's dashboard. And that is not going to be successful for them. So what I mean by optimization, some of the vehicle manufacturers will take a vehicle from 60 to 80,000 miles, let's say. They'll stretch the oil change based on the operating parameters, location, fuel economy, basic information off the engine. So how do we take this to a digital environment when every OEM has different nomenclatures and strategies? And I'm really excited. Seth, you were in some of the sessions at TMC that I was involved in, and I'm really proud of the cross-functional nature that we just got approved through TMC, a brand new VMRS code key, Vehicle Maintenance Reporting Standard, called Code Key 25. It's finally balloted, approved by major OEMs as well as engine manufacturers and trucking fleets. They were all excited because we finally going to have one strategy that we're going to start going to, that we can connect the ecosystem on maintenance. So a lot of that's going to start really rolling out after September is when the final review of the documentation. There's a recommended practice 802 moving to G to explain it, and then it's going to be VMRS code key 25. And what I mean by that is one manufacturer will call a valve lash adjustment an overhead adjustment. Another one calls it a valve lash adjustment. And the other one says engine valves adjust. They're all going to be engine valve train adjustment. And then there'll be one code so we can handshake a service provider to the fleet management system, an FMS like Trimble TMT, all the way back to the OEM. So this way we can all be and that's if the fleet wants to. Either way, we can still have the fleet and the fleet management software on the same page and leverage common terminology in the future. I think that's going to be part of the digital integrations that are going to happen in the future. And I just wanted to share that one example that we're working on.
Yeah, that's great to hear about that progress. And I think it's worth always bearing in mind as well that the typical fleet operator, at least of a certain size, is running different truck makes, right? I mean, they're not tied to one specific brand. So if there's a common language across the OEMs, that does help a lot for a lot of fleet operators that are operating multiple truck makes in their fleet. Another topic is really big right now that I would love to discuss with you is AI, artificial intelligence. This is just everywhere right now. A lot of that, of course, is fueled by this fascination with generative AI, large language models. But really, I think what's core here for our industry is the ability to use data better, to extract more insights out of the data that we're capturing. We just gone over some examples of all the information that we're digitizing and collecting. Now, how do we use that? Brian, from your vantage point, how might the next advances in AI improve data analytics and fleet maintenance practices in the future, especially on the maintenance side of the industry?
It's a great question, but also let me start it with this. It requires the minds at the customer, the fleet. We really have to do a better job getting normalized data in. Yeah. What I mean by that is the data structurally. The first area I think that we can leverage is called, really machine learning. So generative AI is to me the next step, but we really have to start with foundational data. When I looked at how many Freightliners or how many Volvos Max Internationals do we have in our database? Well, it depends on the customer because they might put the vehicle in as an FLTR or a Freightliner. And so people are using different acronyms, different abbreviations. So we are working on a big kick to first, it all starts with the mastering of the data. When I say the mastering, it's going to start with, we're going to have to make sure the make model of the vehicles is accurate using some services from other third parties to make sure we normalize the data. Because when you have the vehicles normalized, you then have a better pool to do machine learning against. And then we're going to try to work with our customers to even leverage things like how do we evolve our fleets to start leveraging industry standards for maintenance items? Like how do we use this new code key? Because then the model and the pool gets so much bigger. Rather than today, every fleet creates their own code for maintenance items. Well, you can't leverage across the industry when you do that. So we're actually focused more on data quality. That's a big initiative first for us. And then after data quality, you'll very quickly start to see the machine learning that comes out, and then we go into the AI. So I think it's a path that we got to get to, not just let's start looking at the data, because I think the results will not be as rewarding as if we got the data quality better first.
So that classic garbage in, garbage out problem with data analytics. If you start with bad data, you'll probably get bad predictions, bad analysis, right?
Exactly.
So that is an action item, I think, for the whole industry, is to figure out how to improve that.
And one other point is, sometimes when you look at most failures today, a lot of failures, the best easy way to fix a vehicle is actually not changing a part. Sometimes it's actually updating a calibration. And so in the model, it's not just looking at the failure of the part. You actually have to know, well, what software level am I on? So working with the vehicle manufacturers, you actually have to go deeper into what rev level of software are you on, because that also changes the strategy of how to fix the product.
Yeah. So this next topic we already touched on a little bit, but I'd like to maybe go a little bit deeper into it. As we all know, diesel trucks are, continue to dominate the industry. They're by far the largest piece of the pie, almost all of it. But we are seeing other powertrain options that have entered the market, or are going to very soon. We see, of course, natural gas. There's a fresh look at that. I think with some of the emission standards coming out, battery electric trucks are on the road today in certain applications. We see the investments in hydrogen fuel cell, also hydrogen combustion. That's one of the pathways. So just thinking about the technology side of this, not just maintenance practices, but also maintenance software, how is that going to have to change to accommodate new types of commercial vehicles if there's no longer an assumption that every vehicle is diesel?
Yeah, well, as we're working on our strategies around asset mastering, it's also identification of the attributes of the fuel types. We've actually been working with TMC because there is a VMRS code key for fuel type. So then going into what is it, a hybrid, electric, diesel, gas, natural gas, hydrogen, you first got to categorize the information that way. So the biggest thing for us is with the software, we're working on making sure the product stays contemporary with the different fuel types that the customer is choosing, because that changes the attributes. Also, a big part of Trimble's portfolio is our freight delivery or TMS side, because we also have to know the ranges for deliveries. So you can't schedule PC Miler and Copilot. You can't, it would be really important to know the range of a product before you put a route together. Yeah. So that all goes into base foundational core products for all the products that we have at Trimble.
No, it's a great overview, and something that the whole technology ecosystem that supports the industry will be going through, I think, as more of these vehicles start to hit the road.
Absolutely.
Just looking ahead, I always like to end with a forward-looking question and a little bit of a crystal ball question, if you will. But how do you envision fleet maintenance technology changing and evolving over the course of the next decade? I know it's again, a crystal ball question, but if you had to look out to the future, how do you see things changing?
I think the skill set of our technicians is going to be less wrenches and more computers. People are going to have to address the technology, and I think there'll be more done leveraging machine learning, AI, and analytics. So I'm really excited because that's an area of growth for all of us, and it's an area where I see too much manual work being done today in the fleet world, that I think there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained where the industry is going.
Yeah, we'll be following it every step of the way. Brian, any parting words before we wrap up?
No, I can't thank you enough for putting this together, and look forward to working with you again in the future. And next time we meet, I'll see you at Trimble Insight coming up in September.
Yeah, that is coming up fast. I will see you there. Really enjoyed the conversation, Brian, and great thoughts as always. Thank you again for joining us and sharing your insights. Great conversation.
Thank you. You too.
Next up, Features Editor Mike Fries puts Dan Egan, Regional Senior Service Director West at Fleet Pride, in the hot seat on trucking equipment and maintenance.
Are you ready to turn the bolts? Because it's wrench time. With me, I have Dan Egan, Regional Senior Service Director West At Fleet Pride, Dan Egan has over 14 years experience in parts and product management within the trucking industry, serving his last 3.5 years with Fleet Pride, a leading provider of parts and services for heavy-duty trucks and trailers. Coordinate has centered conversations around parts supply management and the precise coordination of a number of ingredients, sourcing the right parts, keeping your inventory up to date, maintaining your distribution network, and more. With that, we thought that you, Dan Egan, would be the perfect fit to answer some of our questions surrounding parts and services. This is a rapid-fire statement type of segment that requires you to fill in the blanks. So, Dan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. In one sentence, what is the state of the aftermarket parts supply chain right now?
Hungry for information and efficiency.
In 5 words or less, how do you foresee the distribution of replacement parts for electric vehicles developing in the coming years?
Opportunistic for some, painful for most customers and distributors, unfortunately.
Well, we'll let you go with the excess of more than 5 words, Dan. But all right, here's the next question. Fleet Pride is known to have the dedicated force of heavy-duty experts who advise on parts and maintenance. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is flexibility to the technician and his training, as well as equipment and maintenance?
If you want to do it well, I'd rank it a 10. I know we invest heavily in our learning and development departments, Fleet Pride Tech University. These are avenues of the business that we know we have to arm our technicians with the skills training and professional development training for them to be successful.
All right, Dan, let's get into the nitty gritty. Okay, what's a better brake system, air discs or drum?
With my family on the road, from a safety perspective, I'm going air disc 100 times out of 100.
Not a bad choice at all. Considering evolving standards and equipment, what is one way maintenance shops can prepare their technicians and fleets for change?
What we just touched on, invest heavily in your people, invest in their training and their skills development and their professional development. We know that translates to the right customer experience.
Training is important. And now, Dan, the final word, literally in one word, describe the future as you see it for heavy-duty parts management.
Digital.
And that's it, folks. The nuts and bolts are tightened, and wrench time has come to a close. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Thank you.
Now we've reached the end of Coordinate. Thank you once again for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed the discussions and gained some insights into effective parts management strategies for fleets and maintenance providers. We certainly had an interesting array of guests today. Paul Rosa shared his perspective on handling disruptions in the supply chain and how to build strategic partnerships into your fleet sourcing strategy. Kevin Wiedek offered his thoughts on implementing new technologies and how the emergence of cleaner vehicles will impact the equipment market. Kevin Clark shared his insights on inventory management and how to balance investment costs, obsolescence, and more when deciding between just-in-time or large on-hand inventories. And Brian Molshine detailed how connective maintenance software can support the work of both drivers and technicians. These different perspectives give us new information to digest and apply to our own work. What lessons will you take away from today's guests? Well, that is all for Coordinate. The next quarterly TT special event will bring to life the topics and trends found in our quarterly technology feature, iTech. In the meantime, you can find out more about the issues we've discussed today, along with many other equipment and maintenance-related topics, in Calibrate. Thanks again from all of us at Transport Topics.
Thank you for joining us. This was a Transport Topics special event series production.